The fluorescent lights of the gas station buzzed overhead as Simone pulled her silver sedan up to pump number 7. It was nearly midnight, and the highway had been empty for the last 30 miles. She stepped out into the cool October air, stretching her back after the long drive from the business conference in Atlanta. The conference had been exhausting but successful. She had closed 2 major deals that would keep her consulting firm thriving for another year. As she inserted her credit card into the pump, Simone noticed an old white van parked at the far edge of the lot, away from the lights. Something about it caught her attention. Maybe it was the way it sat there, slightly tilted, or maybe it was the faint movement she saw through the windows. She told herself to mind her own business and focus on getting home, but her eyes kept drifting back to that van. The pump clicked as it finished filling her tank. Simone replaced the nozzle and screwed her gas cap back on, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with that van. She walked toward the convenience store to grab a coffee for the remaining hour of her drive, but her feet carried her past the store entrance and toward the mysterious vehicle instead. As she got closer, her heart began to race. Through the dirty window she could make out shapes inside. A person. No, 2 people. One large, one small. The larger shape was curled up in the back seat, and the smaller one was nestled against them. Simone's breath caught in her throat when she saw the worn blanket draped over them both. She knocked gently on the window, not wanting to frighten whoever was inside but needing to know they were okay. The figure in the back seat stirred, and a face appeared in the window. Simone's entire world tilted on its axis. It was Brianna. Her daughter. Her beautiful, capable daughter who was supposed to be living in the nice apartment Simone had purchased for her in downtown Columbus just 8 months ago. Brianna's eyes widened in shock and then filled with tears. She quickly unlocked the door and climbed out, her movements stiff from sleeping in the cramped space. She was wearing a thin blue jacket over her clothes, and Simone could see she had lost weight. Her daughter's once bright face looked drawn and exhausted. "Mom," Brianna whispered, her voice cracking. "I can explain." Simone looked past her daughter into the van and saw her 2-year-old grandson Caleb sleeping under a pile of clothes and blankets. The little boy's face was peaceful in sleep, unaware of the harsh reality he was living in. Simone felt something break inside her chest, a mixture of rage and heartbreak so intense she had to steady herself against the van. "Where is the apartment I bought for you?" Simone asked, her voice trembling as she tried to keep her emotions in check. "Brianna, where is the home I made sure you had?" Brianna's face crumpled and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Mom, I tried to call you so many times but Jerome said I was being dramatic. He said you wouldn't believe me anyway." "Believe you about what?" Simone demanded, though she kept her voice low to avoid waking Caleb. "What happened?" "Jerome and Lorraine," Brianna sobbed quietly, wrapping her arms around herself. "They said I had no right to the apartment. They said it wasn't in my name so I had no claim to it. They changed the locks 3 weeks ago and put all my stuff on the curb. I had nowhere to go, Mom. I've been living in this van with Caleb ever since." The words hit Simone like physical blows. Jerome, Brianna's husband of 3 years, and his mother Lorraine had kicked her own daughter out onto the street. With a baby. They had taken the apartment that Simone had worked so hard to buy, the apartment she had purchased specifically to ensure her daughter and grandson would always have a safe place to live. "Get Caleb," Simone said, her voice now steady and cold. "Get him and whatever belongings you have. You're coming with me right now." "But Mom, the van is all we have," Brianna protested weakly. "I need it to sleep in until I can figure out what to do." "You're not sleeping in a van anymore," Simone stated firmly. "Get your son. We're leaving this gas station and you're never coming back to this. Do you understand me?" Brianna nodded, fresh tears falling as she carefully gathered Caleb from the back seat. The little boy stirred but didn't wake as his mother wrapped him in the least dirty blanket and held him close. Simone helped grab 2 plastic bags that seemed to contain all of Brianna's remaining possessions. "What about the van?" Brianna asked as Simone loaded the bags into her trunk. "Leave it," Simone said. "You won't need it anymore." They drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. Brianna sat in the passenger seat with Caleb sleeping in her lap, staring out the window at the dark highway. Simone gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind racing with questions and plans. The coffee she had wanted was forgotten. Sleep was the furthest thing from her mind now. "How long have you been living like this?" Simone finally asked. 3 weeks, Brianna answered quietly. "I tried staying with my friend Rachel at first, but her landlord said I couldn't be there more than a few days. I didn't want to burden anyone else and I was too ashamed to call you. Jerome kept telling me you would be disappointed in me for losing the apartment." "Losing the apartment?" Simone repeated, anger rising in her voice. You didn't lose anything. It was stolen from you. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever make me disappointed in you for being victimized by that man and his mother. Brianna was silent for a moment before speaking again. It started small, Mom. Little things. Jerome would complain about how you always interfered in our lives. Lorraine would visit and make comments about how the apartment was too nice for us, how we didn't deserve it. Then Jerome lost his job at the warehouse, and Lorraine started staying with us more often. When did he lose his job? Simone asked, trying to piece together the timeline. About 4 months ago, Brianna replied. He said it was temporary, that he would find something else soon. But then he stopped looking. He started spending all day at home, and Lorraine would come over and they would talk in private. I felt like a stranger in my own home. Simone's hands tightened on the wheel. She had sensed something was wrong when Brianna stopped returning her calls as frequently, but Jerome had always had an excuse ready when Simone asked about it. Work was busy. Brianna was tired. The baby was sick. All lies, Simone now realized, designed to keep her away while they executed their plan. They started saying the apartment was wasted on me, Brianna continued, her voice barely above a whisper. That I didn't take care of it properly. That I wasn't grateful enough. Lorraine would rearrange things and then get angry when I put them back. Jerome stopped talking to me except to criticize. Then one day I came home from the grocery store and the locks were changed. They changed the locks while you were out shopping? Simone asked, horrified. Brianna nodded. All my clothes and Caleb's things were in trash bags on the sidewalk. Lorraine was standing there with a smug look on her face. She said the apartment belonged to Jerome now and that I could leave. When I tried to argue, Jerome came out and told me to stop making a scene. He said I should be grateful they even let me take my stuff. Where was Jerome working when this happened? Simone asked. If he lost his job 4 months ago, how were they paying for anything? I don't know, Brianna admitted. He said he found something new, but he never talked about it. He would leave in the mornings and come back late at night. Sometimes he smelled like perfume, but when I asked about it, he said I was paranoid and jealous. The pieces were coming together in Simone's mind, and she didn't like the picture they formed. Jerome had been unemployed, possibly having an affair, and conspiring with his mother to steal the apartment from Brianna. They had isolated her daughter, broken her spirit, and then thrown her out like garbage. Did you try to go to the police? Simone asked. I did, Brianna said. But when I got to the station, I realized I didn't have any proof the apartment was supposed to be mine. Jerome said all the papers were in his name, and I didn't know where you kept the original documents. The police said it sounded like a civil matter and I should get a lawyer, but I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom. I barely have money for food. Simone pulled off at the next exit, heading toward her home in the suburbs. Her house was large, much too large for one person, and had plenty of room for Brianna and Caleb. But more importantly, it had something else they needed. Her home office, where she kept copies of every important document related to her business and personal finances, including the deed and purchase agreement for Brianna's apartment. The apartment is in your name, Simone said firmly. I made sure of it when I bought it. I wanted you to have security, to know that you had something that was truly yours. Jerome is lying. Brianna let out a sob of relief mixed with anguish. I knew you wouldn't have done it any other way, but he was so convincing. He had papers, Mom. He showed me papers that had his name on them. Forged papers, Simone said. Which means he committed fraud. And his mother helped him do it. They're both going to pay for what they did to you. They pulled into Simone's driveway 40 minutes later. The house was dark and welcoming, with the porch light automatically turning on as they approached. Simone helped Brianna carry Caleb inside, and they laid him down in the guest bedroom that Simone had always kept ready for visits. Once Caleb was settled and sleeping peacefully in a real bed for the first time in weeks, Simone made tea while Brianna sat at the kitchen table looking exhausted and lost. The bright red kitchen walls that Simone loved seemed to reflect the anger burning inside her. Tomorrow morning we're going to my office, Simone said as she placed a mug of chamomile tea in front of her daughter. We're going to get all the paperwork together and then we're going to see my lawyer. Jerome and Lorraine think they got away with this, but they made a critical mistake. What's that? Brianna asked, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. They didn't count on me finding out, Simone said, her voice hard. They thought you were too broken to fight back and too ashamed to tell me what happened. They thought wrong. Brianna looked at her mother with red, swollen eyes. Mom, Jerome can be really mean when he's angry. What if he tries to hurt you? Let him try, Simone said coldly. I've dealt with worse than Jerome in my business career. And unlike him, I fight fair, but I fight to win. He and his mother are about to learn that you don't mess with my family." That night, after Brianna had showered and fallen asleep in the guest room with Caleb, Simone sat in her home office surrounded by file folders and documents. She found the deed to the apartment, just as she remembered it. Brianna's name was right there in black and white, with Simone listed as co-owner for the first year only, until Brianna turned 25. She also found the purchase agreement, the inspection reports, and all the correspondence with the real estate agent and the title company. Everything was in order, everything was legal, and everything proved that Jerome had lied to Brianna and stolen property that didn't belong to him. Simone made copies of everything, organizing them into a folder. Then she opened her laptop and began drafting an email to her lawyer, explaining the situation and requesting an emergency meeting. She didn't care what it cost or how long it took. She was going to make sure Jerome and Lorraine faced consequences for what they had done. As the first light of dawn began to creep through her office window, Simone sat back in her chair and allowed herself one moment of emotion. Her daughter had been sleeping in a van at a gas station with a toddler. Her grandson had been living without basic necessities. The family she had worked so hard to protect and provide for had been torn apart by greed and cruelty. But that was ending today. Starting now, Simone was going to wage a war, not with weapons but with the law, with truth, and with the kind of fierce determination that had made her successful in business. Jerome and Lorraine had picked the wrong family to victimize. By the time Brianna woke up late that morning, Simone already had an appointment with her lawyer for that afternoon. She had also called a therapist who specialized in trauma and abuse to schedule an appointment for Brianna. And she had gone to the store to buy clothes and toys for Caleb, along with groceries to stock her kitchen with food a toddler would eat. "Mom, you didn't have to do all this," Brianna said, looking at the bags of clothes and supplies in the living room. "Yes, I did," Simone replied. "And this is just the beginning. Today we start taking your life back." The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of Patricia Reynolds' law office on the 14th floor of a downtown high-rise. Simone sat in one of the leather chairs across from the attorney's desk, with Brianna beside her. Caleb was at Simone's house with a babysitter Simone had hired that morning, giving them the freedom to discuss the situation without worrying about little ears hearing traumatic details. Patricia Reynolds was a tall woman in her 50s with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and keen brown eyes that missed nothing. Simone had worked with her for years on business contracts and had always been impressed by her intelligence and tenacity. If anyone could help them navigate this situation, it was Patricia. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Patricia said, leaning forward with her hands clasped on the desk. "You purchased an apartment for your daughter 8 months ago. The deed has her name as the primary owner, with you as co-owner for the first year. Her husband, without your knowledge or consent, has somehow taken possession of the property and forced your daughter and grandson to leave." "That's correct," Simone confirmed. "And he claimed to have legal documents showing the apartment was in his name." Patricia turned to Brianna. "Did you see these documents yourself, or did he just tell you about them?" "He showed me papers," Brianna said quietly. "They looked official. They had his name typed on them and what looked like signatures and seals. I didn't know what to believe anymore." "Do you have any photographs of these documents?" Patricia asked. Brianna shook her head. "He only let me look at them briefly. Then he put them away and told me to leave before he called the police on me for trespassing." Patricia made notes on her legal pad. "That's an interesting threat, considering you were the legal owner. He used intimidation and false documents to remove you from your own property. That's several crimes right there." She looked at Simone. "You have the original documents?" Simone handed over the folder she had prepared. "Everything is here. Deed, purchase agreement, title insurance, inspection reports, and correspondence with the title company." Patricia spent the next 20 minutes reviewing each document carefully. Her expression grew more serious as she read through the paperwork. Finally, she looked up at them both. "This is ironclad," she said. "There's no question about ownership. Your daughter has full legal rights to this property. The question now is how he managed to convince her otherwise and what he's been doing with the property since he illegally evicted her." "What do you mean what he's been doing with it?" Simone asked. "If he's pretending to be the owner, he might be living there himself, renting it out to others, or using it as collateral for loans," Patricia explained. "We need to find out immediately. I'm going to recommend we hire a private investigator to look into Jerome's activities over the past several months. We need to know everything he's been doing." "Whatever it costs," Simone said firmly. Patricia nodded. "I'll make the call today. In the meantime, I want to hear the full story from Brianna." Every detail you can remember, no matter how small it seems. The more information we have, the stronger our case will be. Brianna took a deep breath and began to tell her story again, this time with Patricia asking detailed questions. As she spoke, a picture emerged of systematic emotional abuse and manipulation that had started long before the actual eviction. When did Jerome's mother start spending more time at your apartment? Patricia asked. About 5 months ago, Brianna replied. Right after Jerome lost his job at the warehouse. At first, I thought she was just coming to help us through a difficult time. She would bring groceries sometimes and offer to watch Caleb while I ran errands. But then she started staying longer and longer. Did she move in? Patricia pressed. Not officially, Brianna said. But she had her own key and she would be there when I woke up in the morning. She started rearranging my kitchen, telling me I was doing things wrong with Caleb, criticizing how I kept the apartment. Jerome would take her side in every argument. What about Jerome's job search? Patricia asked. You said he stopped looking for work? He said he was looking, but I never saw him fill out applications or go to interviews, Brianna explained. He would leave the house around 9 in the morning and come back late at night, but he never talked about where he went. When I asked, he said I was being nosy and controlling. Patricia made more notes. Did you have joint bank accounts? We had one joint account that we used for household expenses, Brianna said. But after he lost his job, he opened a separate account that I didn't have access to. He said it was for his job search expenses, but I noticed money was disappearing from our joint account and going into his private one. How much money? Simone asked, shocked. She hadn't known about any of this. Over the 5 months, probably around $8,000, Brianna said, looking down at her hands. I confronted him about it and he said it was his money too and he could do what he wanted with it. He made me feel guilty for even asking about it. Patricia and Simone exchanged glances. $8,000 was a significant amount of money, especially for someone who claimed to be unemployed and looking for work. Did you notice any other changes in his behavior around this time? Patricia asked. Brianna nodded. He started dressing better when he went out. New clothes that I didn't buy him. He said his mother bought them for job interviews. And like I told my mom, sometimes he came home smelling like women's perfume. When I mentioned it, he said I was imagining things or that he had been at his mother's house and it was her perfume. But you didn't believe him? Patricia prompted. I wanted to, Brianna admitted. But he also became secretive with his phone. He used to leave it lying around, but suddenly he was taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom. If I walked into a room while he was on a call, he would hang up quickly or switch to speaking in a way that made it clear he didn't want me to hear. Patricia continued taking notes, her expression growing grimmer. Let's talk about the day of the eviction. Walk me through exactly what happened. Brianna's hands trembled slightly as she began to recount that day. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had taken Caleb to the pediatrician for his checkup in the morning, and then we stopped at the grocery store. I was gone maybe 3 hours total. When I got back to the apartment building with Caleb and our groceries, I saw trash bags on the sidewalk outside. How many bags? Patricia asked. 6 or 7, Brianna said. I didn't think much of it at first. People throw things out all the time. But as I got closer, I recognized one of Caleb's blankets sticking out of one of the bags. That's when I realized it was our stuff. What did you do? Patricia asked gently. I tried my key in the door, but it wouldn't turn, Brianna continued, tears starting to form in her eyes again. I kept trying, thinking maybe I was using the wrong key or something was stuck. Then Lorraine opened the door from inside. She was smiling, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was mean. What did she say to you? Simone asked, reaching over to hold her daughter's hand. She said, the apartment belongs to Jerome now. You need to take your things and go, Brianna recounted. I told her she couldn't do that, that it was my apartment. She laughed and said I was stupid if I thought I had any claim to it. She said Jerome had legal ownership and I was trespassing. Did you see Jerome at that point? Patricia asked. Not at first, Brianna said. I tried to push past Lorraine to get inside to see my home to get the rest of our things. She blocked me and started yelling that I was assaulting her. Then Jerome came to the door. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I meant nothing to him. The room was quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed this. Simone felt her anger growing with every word of her daughter's story. He told me to stop making a scene, Brianna continued. He said the neighbors were watching and I was embarrassing myself. I begged him to explain what was happening, to tell me why he was doing this. He said I had been living off my mother's charity for too long and it was time for me to stand on my own 2 feet. He said this while he was stealing the apartment your mother bought? Patricia asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. Brianna nodded. I asked him about Caleb, about where we were supposed to go. He said that wasn't his problem. That I should have thought about that before I became such a burden on everyone around me. Simone closed her eyes, trying to control her rage. Jerome had systematically destroyed her daughter's confidence, isolated her, stolen from her, and then discarded her like trash. And his mother had helped him do it. Did anyone else witness this interaction? Patricia asked. Other tenants, building management? There were people watching from windows, Brianna said. But no one came out to help. I think they were uncomfortable. The building manager wasn't there that day. It was his day off. What happened next? Patricia prompted. I loaded the trash bags into my van with Caleb crying the whole time, Brianna said, wiping tears from her cheeks. It took me 4 trips because I had the baby and the groceries too. Jerome and Lorraine watched from the doorway the entire time. When I was done, Lorraine said, Don't come back or we'll call the police. Then they closed the door. Did you try to contact building management later? Patricia asked. I did, Brianna confirmed. I went back the next day when I knew the manager would be there. But when I explained what happened, he said there had been a change in ownership and that Jerome had provided all the proper documentation. He showed me a copy of a deed with Jerome's name on it. Patricia sat up straighter. He showed you a forged deed? I guess so, Brianna said. At the time I thought maybe my mom had made a mistake with the paperwork, or Jerome had found some legal loophole. I was so confused and exhausted. I just took Caleb and left. Did you keep in contact with anyone from your old life during these 3 weeks? Patricia asked. Friends? Other family members? I talked to my friend Rachel a few times, Brianna said. But I was too ashamed to tell her I was living in a van. I told her I was staying with my mom. I couldn't face admitting how bad things had gotten. Patricia closed her notebook and looked at both women. Here's what we're dealing with. Jerome and his mother conspired to commit fraud, theft, and illegal eviction. They forged legal documents and presented them to both you and the building management. They stole money from your joint account. They engaged in emotional abuse and manipulation. And they endangered a child by forcing a mother and baby onto the street. What can we do about it? Simone asked. Quite a lot, Patricia said with a grim smile. First, we're going to file a police report for fraud and theft. Then we're going to file a civil lawsuit for illegal eviction, emotional distress, and conversion of property. We're also going to notify the building management that the deed they were shown was fraudulent and that Brianna is the legal owner. How long will this take? Brianna asked nervously. The criminal charges could take months to process, Patricia admitted. But the civil case we can move on quickly. I'm going to file an emergency motion to restore possession of the apartment to you within the next 48 hours. With the documentation your mother has, the judge should grant it immediately. What about Jerome and Lorraine? Simone asked. Will they face consequences? Absolutely, Patricia said. The police will investigate the fraud. If they find evidence of forged documents, which I'm confident they will, Jerome could face criminal charges. His mother too if she was complicit in the forgery. At minimum, they'll both be defendants in the civil suit. I want them to pay, Simone said flatly. Not just in court. I want them to understand they can't do this to people. They will, Patricia assured her. I'm also going to recommend we hire that private investigator today. I want to know everything about Jerome's activities for the past 5 months. Where he's been getting money, who he's been spending time with, what he's been doing with the apartment. Knowledge is power in cases like this. As they left Patricia's office an hour later with a plan in place, Simone felt some of her anger transform into determination. Jerome and Lorraine had hurt her family, but they had also made a critical error. They had assumed Brianna was alone and helpless. They had forgotten that Brianna had a mother who would move heaven and earth to protect her child. That evening, Simone sat with Brianna in her living room while Caleb played with his new toys on the floor. The little boy was already looking healthier after just 1 day of regular meals and a safe place to sleep. Mom, what if they fight back? Brianna asked quietly. Jerome knows a lot of people. What if he tries to make trouble for you? Let him try, Simone said. I've built my business from nothing, survived a divorce, raised you alone, and succeeded in a male-dominated industry. Jerome is nothing but a con artist who picked on someone he thought was vulnerable. He's about to learn that you're not vulnerable. You're my daughter, and that means you're stronger than he ever realized. Brianna smiled for the first time since Simone had found her at the gas station. It was a small, tentative smile, but it was there. "We're going to get through this," Simone promised. "And when we're done, you're going to have your home back, your confidence back, and a future that doesn't include that terrible man or his awful mother." "I believe you," Brianna said. "Thank you for not being disappointed in me." "I could never be disappointed in you," Simone said firmly. "You survived something terrible. You protected Caleb. You did everything right. Jerome is the one who should be ashamed, and before this is over, I'm going to make sure he is." As they sat together watching Caleb play, Simone thought about the next steps. Patricia was filing the paperwork tomorrow. The private investigator would start his work. The police would be notified. The wheels of justice were beginning to turn, and once they started, there would be no stopping them. Jerome and Lorraine had stolen from the wrong family. They were about to find out exactly what that mistake would cost them. The next morning, Simone woke up early and immediately got to work. While Brianna slept in with Caleb, Simone spread out documents across her dining room table, creating a timeline of everything that had happened. She had called in sick to her own company for the first time in 5 years. Her business could wait. Her family could not. Patricia had emailed her a list of information they would need to build the strongest possible case. Bank statements, phone records, any correspondence between Brianna and Jerome, photographs of the apartment from before the eviction, anything that could establish a pattern of abuse and prove Jerome's fraudulent claims. Simone started with the bank statements. She logged into the account she had set up to pay for the apartment's monthly fees and utilities. The account was in her name but had been established specifically for Brianna's use. What she found made her blood run cold. For the first 3 months after the apartment purchase, the automatic payments had gone through normally. Mortgage payments, which Simone covered as a gift to her daughter. Utility bills. Internet service. Everything was in order. But starting in month 4, strange charges began appearing. Cash withdrawals from ATMs across the city. Large transfers to an account Simone didn't recognize. Payments to jewelry stores, expensive restaurants, and high-end clothing retailers. The amounts were staggering. Over the course of 4 months, nearly $15,000 had been siphoned from the account meant to maintain Brianna's home. Simone printed out every statement and highlighted each suspicious charge. She called the bank and requested detailed transaction records going back a full year. The customer service representative was helpful and promised to email the records within 24 hours. Next, she pulled up the phone bills. Brianna had been on Simone's family phone plan, which meant Simone had access to all the call records. She began going through them systematically, looking for patterns. Around the time Jerome supposedly lost his job, the number of calls and texts from his phone had increased dramatically. But they weren't calls to potential employers or job placement agencies. They were to a single number that appeared hundreds of times. Sometimes multiple calls per day, often lasting 30 minutes or more. Simone wrote down the unknown number and added it to her list of things to investigate. She also noticed that calls between Jerome's phone and Brianna's phone had dropped off sharply during the same period. Where they used to communicate throughout the day, suddenly there were days with no contact at all, even though they were supposedly living together. By the time Brianna came downstairs with Caleb at 9 in the morning, Simone had filled 3 legal pads with notes and had stacks of printed documents organized by category. "Mom, you didn't have to do all this," Brianna said, looking at the dining room table covered in papers. "Yes, I did," Simone replied. "And we're just getting started. I need you to help me with something. Can you remember the names of any of Jerome's friends or co-workers? Anyone he spent time with regularly?" Brianna settled Caleb in his high chair with some breakfast and thought for a moment. There was Brandon from the warehouse. They used to play basketball together on weekends. And there was someone named Russell who he mentioned a few times, but I never met him. Simone wrote down the names. What about his mother's friends? Anyone she talked about? "She has a sister named Denise," Brianna said. "They talked on the phone a lot. And there was a neighbor of hers named Carol who would come over sometimes when Lorraine was at our place." More names went on the list. Simone was building a web of connections, people who might have information about what Jerome and Lorraine had been planning. "I need to ask you something difficult," Simone said gently. "Do you have any proof of the abuse Jerome put you through? Text messages, emails, anything where he was cruel or threatening?" Brianna's face fell. "I deleted a lot of messages because they upset me. But I might have some older ones saved." She pulled out her phone and began scrolling. After a few minutes, she found a text thread from 2 months before the eviction. The messages made Simone's hands shake with anger. Jerome had sent dozens of texts calling Brianna useless, stupid, and a burden. He had criticized her parenting, her appearance, and her intelligence. In one particularly vicious message, He had told her she was lucky he was willing to stay with her because no one else would want her. Can you forward all of these to my email? Simone asked, her voice tight with controlled fury. And please don't delete anything else no matter how painful it is to see. These messages prove he was abusing you. Brianna nodded and began forwarding the texts. As she did, she seemed to remember other incidents. There might be something else, Brianna said slowly. A few weeks before they kicked me out, I came home and found Jerome going through the apartment documents. You know, the folder you gave me with all the purchase paperwork. I asked him what he was doing and he got really angry. He said he was looking for something and it was none of my business. What happened to that folder? Simone asked urgently. It was in the apartment when they locked me out, Brianna said. I didn't have time to grab it when they threw my things out. Simone added this to her notes. Jerome had been studying the apartment documents, probably looking for ways to forge his own version. This was premeditation, planning, conspiracy. It made the case against him even stronger. The doorbell rang at 10:30. Simone answered it to find a man in his 40s wearing casual business attire. He had kind eyes and carried a leather messenger bag. Mrs. Foster? He asked. I'm Thomas Brooks, the private investigator Ms. Reynolds hired. She said you were expecting me. Simone invited him in and introduced him to Brianna. Thomas settled at the dining room table and pulled out a notebook. I've already reviewed the basic facts of the case with Ms. Reynolds, Thomas said. But I'd like to hear the story directly from you both. The more details you can give me, the better I can investigate. For the next 2 hours they went through everything again. Thomas asked detailed questions about Jerome's daily routine, his friends, his mother's involvement, and any unusual behavior either of them had displayed. He took extensive notes and photographed some of the documents Simone had prepared. Based on what you're telling me, I'm seeing several lines of investigation, Thomas said when they finished. First, I need to verify Jerome's employment status. If he lied about losing his job at the warehouse or if he's working somewhere else and hiding the income, that's relevant. Second, I want to trace where that money from your bank account went. Third, I need to identify who he's been in contact with constantly over the past several months. The phone number, Simone said, showing him her notes. He called this number hundreds of times. Thomas wrote it down. I'll run a reverse lookup and see what comes up. If it's a cell phone, I can usually find out who it belongs to within a day or two. What about the forged documents? Brianna asked. Can you find out who made them? That's trickier, Thomas admitted. But I have contacts who can analyze documents for signs of forgery. If Jerome used a service to create fake deeds, there might be a digital trail. If he made them himself, the quality of the forgery will tell us something about his capabilities. After Thomas left with copies of all the relevant documents, Simone made lunch for Brianna and Caleb. The little boy was happily eating chicken nuggets and seemed completely unaware of the adult drama unfolding around him. For that, Simone was grateful. Caleb deserved his innocence. Mom, can I ask you something? Brianna said as they cleaned up the kitchen. Anything, Simone replied. Why did you buy the apartment in my name? Brianna asked. You could have kept it in your name and just let me live there. It would have been simpler. Simone paused, considering her answer. Because I wanted you to have something that was truly yours. Not just borrowed from me but owned by you. I wanted you to have security and independence. I never imagined someone would try to steal it from you. Jerome used to say you were trying to control me by giving me things, Brianna said quietly. He said you wanted to keep me dependent on you forever. That's the opposite of what I wanted, Simone said firmly. Giving you that apartment was about giving you freedom, not taking it away. Jerome twisted everything because he wanted to isolate you from me. He knew that if you felt grateful to me, you'd talk to me and I might see through his lies. Brianna nodded slowly. I see that now. I wish I had seen it then. He was manipulating you, Simone said. Professional con artists spend years learning how to manipulate people. Jerome might not be professional, but he's had practice. His mother probably taught him everything she knows. That afternoon, Patricia called with an update. I've filed the emergency motion to restore possession. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9. The judge is known for taking property rights very seriously, so I'm optimistic. Will Jerome and Lorraine be there? Simone asked. They've been served with notice, Patricia confirmed. Whether they show up or not is their choice. But the hearing will proceed either way. What do we need to bring? Simone asked. Just yourselves and the document folder, Patricia replied. I have everything else I need. Simone, I want you to prepare yourself. If Jerome and his mother do show up, it could get confrontational. They're not going to be happy about being challenged. I can handle it, Simone said confidently. I know you can, Patricia replied. But I need Brianna to be prepared too. Seeing Jerome again might be difficult for her. After the call, Simone sat down with Brianna to discuss the hearing. You don't have to come tomorrow if you don't want to, Simone said. I can represent you. No, Brianna said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. I need to be there. I need to face him and show him that I'm not afraid anymore. You don't have to prove anything to him, Simone said gently. I need to prove it to myself, Brianna replied. For 3 weeks I've been hiding. Living in a van, too scared to even try to fight back. Tomorrow, I want to stand in that courtroom and watch his lies fall apart. Simone felt a surge of pride in her daughter. Despite everything Jerome had done to break her spirit, Brianna's core strength was emerging. She was a fighter just like her mother. That evening they received an email from Thomas. He had already made progress on several fronts. The phone number Jerome had been calling belonged to a woman named Crystal Montgomery. Thomas had found her social media profiles, which showed photos of her with Jerome at restaurants and events over the past 4 months. The photos were dated, and many of them were taken during times when Jerome had told Brianna he was job hunting or at his mother's house. In several photos, Jerome was wearing the expensive clothes that had appeared in the bank statements. The evidence was damning. Thomas had also confirmed that Jerome had not actually lost his job at the warehouse. He had been fired for theft. His former supervisor was willing to provide a statement about Jerome's termination and the reasons for it. He's been lying about everything, Brianna said, staring at the photos on Simone's laptop. While I was struggling to buy diapers and formula, he was taking this woman to fancy restaurants with money from our account. Yes, Simone said simply. And tomorrow a judge is going to hear about all of it. That night, Simone couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the court hearing, running through possible scenarios in her mind. She wanted to be prepared for anything Jerome or Lorraine might say or do. Around 2 in the morning, she went back to her home office and began preparing a statement. If the judge allowed her to speak, she wanted to make sure she covered every important point. She wrote about buying the apartment for Brianna, about the systematic abuse Jerome had inflicted, about finding her daughter and grandson homeless at a gas station. She wrote about the money stolen from her account, about the forged documents, about Jerome's fired job and his secret relationship with another woman. She wrote about Lorraine's complicity in all of it. And she wrote about the 3 weeks Brianna and Caleb had spent living in a van because 2 cruel people had decided they were entitled to something that didn't belong to them. When she finished, the statement was 3 pages long. It was clear, factual, and devastating. She printed 2 copies, one for herself and one for Patricia. At 7 in the morning, she woke Brianna and helped her choose what to wear to court. They settled on a simple green dress that looked professional but also showed how thin Brianna had become during her ordeal. Simone wore a navy blue suit that projected authority and competence. As they prepared to leave for the courthouse, Simone's phone rang. It was Thomas. I have one more piece of information before your hearing, he said. I ran a property search on Lorraine's address. She's facing foreclosure. Her house is 3 months behind on payments, and the bank has filed notice. So she needs money, Simone said, the pieces clicking into place. Exactly, Thomas confirmed. I think the plan was to force Brianna out, establish fraudulent ownership of the apartment, and then either sell it or use it as collateral for a loan to save Lorraine's house. Can you get documentation of the foreclosure proceedings? Simone asked. Already done, Thomas said. I'm emailing it to Patricia right now. Simone thanked him and ended the call. Now she understood the full picture. This wasn't just cruelty or greed. It was desperation. Lorraine was about to lose her home, so she and her son had conspired to steal Brianna's home instead. It was calculated, cold-blooded, and about to blow up in their faces. As Simone and Brianna drove to the courthouse, Simone reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. Whatever happens in there, remember that you did nothing wrong, Simone said. You are the victim here. Jerome and his mother are the criminals. The truth is on our side. I know, Brianna said, squeezing back. And I'm ready to take my life back. The courthouse was busy that Thursday morning, with people streaming in and out of various courtrooms handling different cases. Simone and Brianna met Patricia in the lobby at 8:30. Patricia looked sharp in her gray suit, carrying a large briefcase filled with documents. Thomas sent me the foreclosure information, Patricia said as they rode the elevator up to the family court floor. It's excellent evidence of motive. It shows Lorraine had a financial incentive to help Jerome steal the apartment. Have you heard if they're going to show up? Simone asked. Their lawyer called my office this morning and said they plan to contest the motion, Patricia replied. So yes, they'll be here. The courtroom was smaller than Simone had expected, with rows of wooden benches for observers and tables for the attorneys on either side. Judge Margaret Chin, according to the nameplate on the bench, was already seated and reviewing paperwork when they entered. Simone and Brianna sat behind Patricia at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, the defendant's table was empty. At 9:05, Jerome walked in with Lorraine and a lawyer Simone didn't recognize. Jerome looked different than the last time Simone had seen him at a family dinner 8 months ago. He had gained weight and his clothes were expensive but garish. Gold chains hung around his neck and a large watch glinted on his wrist. Lorraine wore a fur coat despite the mild weather and had clearly spent money on her hair and nails. Brianna tensed when she saw them, and Simone put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Jerome glanced over at them and his eyes narrowed. He leaned over to whisper something to his lawyer, who shook his head in response. All rise, the bailiff announced. Court is now in session, the Honorable Judge Margaret Chin presiding. Everyone stood as the judge settled into her seat. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. We're here for an emergency motion to restore possession of property, Judge Chin said, looking at her papers. Case number 2024 CV 8847, Brianna Foster versus Jerome Mitchell. Ms. Reynolds, you're representing the plaintiff. Yes, Your Honor, Patricia said, standing. And you are? The judge asked, looking at Jerome's lawyer. Henry Keller, Your Honor, representing the defendants Jerome Mitchell and Lorraine Mitchell. Proceed with your motion, Ms. Reynolds, Judge Chin said. Patricia stood and began presenting their case. She walked the judge through the purchase of the apartment, showing the deed with Brianna's name clearly visible. She explained how Jerome had illegally evicted Brianna and presented forged documents to claim ownership. Your Honor, we have here the original purchase documents signed and notarized showing clear ownership, Patricia said, handing copies to the bailiff to give to the judge. We also have testimony from the building manager that Jerome presented different documents claiming he was the owner. Those documents are fraudulent. Do you have copies of the fraudulent documents? Judge Chin asked. We're working on obtaining them from the building management, Your Honor, Patricia replied. But I can present testimony from my client about what she was shown. Mr. Keller, does your client dispute that these are the original legitimate purchase documents? Judge Chin asked. Henry Keller stood, looking uncomfortable. Your Honor, my clients maintain that they have legal ownership of the property. They claim that the plaintiff abandoned the residence and forfeited her rights. On what legal basis? Judge Chin asked sharply. You can't forfeit ownership of property by leaving it temporarily. That's not how property law works. Your Honor, my clients believe there was an understanding that ownership would transfer, Keller said weakly. An understanding? Judge Chin repeated, her tone incredulous. Is there a written agreement documenting this understanding? A contract? A deed transfer that was properly filed with the county? No, Your Honor, but... Then there was no transfer of ownership, Judge Chin said firmly. Ms. Reynolds, continue. Patricia presented the bank statements showing the money that had been stolen from Simone's account. She presented the text messages showing Jerome's abuse of Brianna. She presented Thomas's preliminary findings about Jerome's job termination for theft and his relationship with another woman. Your Honor, this is a clear case of domestic abuse, fraud, and theft, Patricia said. My client was systematically isolated, abused, and ultimately forced from her own home through intimidation and false legal claims. She spent 3 weeks living in a vehicle with her 2-year-old child because she believed the lies she was told about her property rights. Your Honor, this is all speculation and hearsay, Keller objected. Which parts are hearsay, Mr. Keller? Judge Chin asked. The bank statements are documentary evidence. The text messages are contemporaneous communications. The deed is a public record. What exactly are you objecting to? Keller floundered for a moment. Your Honor, my clients deny all allegations of wrongdoing. Of course they do, Judge Chin said dryly. That's why we have courts. Ms. Reynolds, do you have any additional evidence? Yes, Your Honor, Patricia said. She presented Thomas's report about Lorraine's foreclosure proceedings. This establishes motive for the defendant's actions. Lorraine Mitchell is losing her home and needed a financial solution. The solution she and her son chose was to steal my client's property. That's outrageous, Lorraine burst out from her seat. We didn't steal anything. That girl was living in our property and refusing to leave. We had every right to remove her. Mrs. Mitchell, you'll have an opportunity to testify if your lawyer calls you, Judge Chin said sharply. Until then, please remain silent. Patricia continued, presenting the photographs of Jerome with Crystal Montgomery, dated during times when he claimed to be job hunting. She presented the statement from Jerome's former supervisor about his termination for theft. Your Honor, the pattern is clear, Patricia concluded. Jerome Mitchell is a con artist who married my client for financial gain. When his mother faced financial difficulties, they conspired to steal valuable property from a vulnerable young mother. They used fraud, forgery, and intimidation to accomplish this. We're asking the court to immediately restore possession of the apartment to its rightful owner and to order the defendants to vacate within 24 hours. Mr. Keller, would you like to present your defense? Judge Chin asked. Keller stood again, looking even more uncomfortable. Your Honor, my clients admit that there may have been some misunderstanding about the property ownership. However, they maintain they acted in good faith based on information they believe to be accurate. What information? Judge Chin asked. Where did they get the idea that Jerome owned the apartment? They believed it was a marital asset, Keller said. The property was purchased before the marriage and titled solely in Brianna Foster's name, Judge Chin said, reading from the documents. Under state law, that makes it separate property, not marital property. Your clients are either ignorant of basic property law or they're lying. Which is it? Keller looked back at Jerome and Lorraine, who were whispering urgently to each other. Your Honor, perhaps we could request a continuance to gather more information. Absolutely not, Judge Chin said. A young mother and her child have been homeless for 3 weeks because of your client's actions. This is an emergency motion and I'm ruling on it today. Mr. Mitchell, would you like to testify? Jerome stood up, straightening his expensive shirt. Yes, Your Honor, I would. He took the stand and was sworn in. Patricia stood to cross-examine him. Mr. Mitchell, when did you first decide to claim ownership of the apartment at 445 Riverside Drive, Unit 302? Patricia asked. I didn't decide it, Jerome said. I always believed it was mine. My wife and I lived there together. But you never paid the mortgage, did you? Patricia pressed. My mother-in-law paid it, Jerome admitted. And the deed has your wife's name on it, not yours, correct? I guess so, Jerome said. But we were married. What's hers is mine. That's not how property law works, Mr. Mitchell, Patricia said. Did you forge documents claiming to own the apartment? No, Jerome said firmly. Then where did the documents come from that you showed to the building manager? Jerome hesitated. I had a lawyer prepare them. What lawyer? Patricia asked. What's their name? I don't remember, Jerome said. You don't remember the name of the lawyer who prepared important property documents for you? Patricia asked skeptically. It was a few months ago, Jerome said defensively. Mr. Mitchell, were you fired from your job at Central Warehouse for theft? Patricia asked, changing direction. That's not relevant, Jerome protested. Answer the question, Judge Chin ordered. Yes, Jerome admitted. But it was a misunderstanding. Were you in a romantic relationship with Crystal Montgomery while married to my client? Patricia continued. That's personal, Jerome said. Answer the question, the judge repeated. We were friends, Jerome said. Patricia pulled out the photographs Thomas had provided. Friends who dined at expensive restaurants together? Friends who appeared together at hotel bars? Friends who spent afternoons at the Grand Plaza Hotel? Jerome's face flushed. Okay, maybe we were more than friends. But my marriage was already over by then. Your marriage was over because you destroyed it, Patricia said. You abused your wife emotionally, stole money from household accounts, conducted an affair, and then collaborated with your mother to illegally evict her from her own home. Is that correct? I didn't do anything illegal, Jerome insisted. You presented forged documents to claim ownership of property that doesn't belong to you, Patricia said. That's fraud. You stole $15,000 from a bank account meant for household expenses. That's theft. You forced a mother and child onto the street through false legal claims. That's illegal eviction. Should I continue? Your Honor, Keller objected weakly. Overruled, Judge Chin said. Ms. Reynolds is establishing a pattern of criminal behavior relevant to this motion. Continue. Patricia turned to Lorraine. Mrs. Mitchell, would you like to testify? Lorraine stood up angrily. This is all lies. That girl was taking advantage of my son. She was lazy and ungrateful. We did her a favor by giving her a place to live, and she threw it in our faces. You did her a favor? Patricia repeated. Her mother bought and paid for that apartment. You did nothing except help your son steal it. We didn't steal anything, Lorraine shouted. That apartment should have been Jerome's from the beginning. What kind of mother gives her daughter something without giving anything to the husband? It was an insult. So you decided to take it? Patricia asked. To make things fair in your eyes? We took what should have been ours, Lorraine said. Your Honor, Patricia said, turning to the judge. The defendant has just admitted to taking property that didn't belong to them. I rest my case. Judge Chin was writing notes, her expression severe. I've heard enough. Mr. Keller, unless you have something substantive to add, I'm ready to rule. Your Honor, my clients request leniency, Keller said. They made an error in judgment, but they didn't mean to cause harm. They caused substantial harm, Judge Chin said. They committed fraud, they endangered a child, and they've shown no remorse. Here's my ruling. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath. Possession of the property at 445 Riverside Drive, Unit 302, is immediately restored to Brianna Foster, Judge Chin announced. Jerome Mitchell and Lorraine Mitchell are ordered to vacate the premises within 24 hours and to return all keys and access codes. They are further ordered to return any property belonging to Brianna Foster that remains in the apartment. Brianna let out a quiet sob of relief. Simone squeezed her hand. Furthermore, Judge Chin continued, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. The evidence presented today suggests multiple violations of state law, including fraud, theft, and forgery. The defendants will remain in this jurisdiction and make themselves available for investigation. Your Honor, that's excessive, Keller protested. What's excessive, Mr. Keller, is stealing someone's home and forcing a mother and baby to live on the street, Judge Chin said coldly. Your clients are fortunate I don't have the authority to order their immediate arrest. This court will also require Jerome Mitchell and Lorraine Mitchell to pay all legal fees incurred by the plaintiff in bringing this emergency motion. Court is adjourned. As the judge left the bench, Jerome and Lorraine exploded in anger. Lorraine turned to Brianna and began shouting, but the bailiff quickly stepped between them. Ma'am, you need to leave the courtroom now, the bailiff said firmly. This isn't over, Jerome hissed at Brianna as he was escorted out. You're going to regret this. That sounded like a threat, Mr. Mitchell, Patricia said loudly. Shall we add harassment to the list of charges? Jerome's lawyer grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the exit before he could say anything else. When they were gone, Brianna collapsed into her chair, shaking with relief and residual fear. Simone wrapped her arms around her daughter. It's over, Simone whispered. You won. The apartment is yours again. We need to change the locks immediately, Patricia said, all business. I've already contacted a locksmith who can meet us there this afternoon. We'll also document the condition of the apartment in case they damaged anything. Can they really do this in 24 hours? Brianna asked. What if they refuse to leave? Then the police will remove them, Patricia said. The judge's order is legally binding. If they're still there after 24 hours, they'll be arrested for trespassing. Thomas called Patricia's phone while they were still in the courthouse. Patricia put him on speaker. I just got a hit on something big, Thomas said. Jerome Mitchell took out a personal loan 3 weeks ago using the apartment as collateral. He used the forged documents to do it. The loan was for $50,000. Where's the money? Patricia asked. He used it to pay off Lorraine's mortgage and stop the foreclosure, Thomas replied. The rest went into a joint account he has with Crystal Montgomery. They were planning to leave town. Simone felt ice in her veins. Not only had Jerome stolen the apartment, he had put it up as collateral for a loan based on fraudulent documents. If they hadn't acted quickly, the bank would have foreclosed and Brianna would have lost everything. Can we get that loan voided? Simone asked. Absolutely, Patricia said. The bank will void any loan made with fraudulent collateral. And Jerome will be responsible for paying back every cent, which means he'll be in debt for years. As they left the courthouse, Simone felt both triumphant and furious. They had won this round, but the full extent of Jerome's crimes was still being uncovered. He hadn't just stolen an apartment. He had nearly destroyed Brianna's entire future. But now they knew everything. And with that knowledge they could make sure Jerome and Lorraine paid for every single thing they had done. The locksmith arrived at the apartment at 2 o'clock that afternoon. Simone, Brianna, and Patricia stood in the hallway outside Unit 302, armed with the judge's order and ready to reclaim what had been stolen. Patricia knocked firmly on the door. There was no response. She knocked again, louder this time. Jerome Mitchell, Lorraine Mitchell, this is Patricia Reynolds, attorney for Brianna Foster. I have a court order granting my client immediate possession of this property. You have been ordered to vacate within 24 hours. We are here to change the locks and document the property's condition. Still no response. Patricia nodded to the locksmith, who began working on the door. It took him less than 5 minutes to open it without causing damage. The apartment was a mess. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, clothes scattered everywhere, trash overflowing from bins. But what caught everyone's attention were the boxes stacked near the door. Jerome and Lorraine had already started packing. They knew they were going to lose, Simone said quietly. Brianna walked through the apartment slowly, taking in the damage. The walls had new holes where they had apparently hung pictures or shelves. The carpet in the living room was stained. The kitchen cabinets hung open, many of them empty. They took my dishes, Brianna said, her voice hollow. My grandmother's china that she left me. It's gone. Patricia was taking photographs with her phone, documenting everything. Make a list of everything that's missing. We'll add it to the civil suit. They spent the next hour cataloging the damage and missing items. Jerome and Lorraine had taken more than just dishes. Brianna's winter clothes were gone. The good towels and linens. Small appliances. Even some of Caleb's toys that had been left behind during the original eviction. This is beyond petty, Simone said, furious. They stole your child's toys. They probably sold them, Patricia said grimly. If Jerome needed money for his affair and his scheme, he would have liquidated anything he could. The locksmith finished installing new locks on both the main door and the deadbolt. He handed Brianna a set of keys. You're the only one with access now, he said. If anyone tries to get in without permission, call the police immediately. After he left, Simone looked at her daughter. Do you want to stay here tonight or come back to my place? I want to stay, Brianna said firmly. This is my home. I'm not letting them chase me away from it again. Then let's clean it up, Simone said, rolling up her sleeves. They spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning, throwing away Jerome and Lorraine's belongings, and making the apartment livable again. Patricia left to file additional paperwork, promising to call if there were any developments. By 6 o'clock the apartment looked better. Not perfect but livable. Simone ordered pizza for dinner, and they sat on the floor eating it because Jerome had taken the dining table. We'll get you new furniture, Simone promised. Better furniture than before. I don't care about the furniture, Brianna said. I just care that it's mine again. A loud knock on the door made them both jump. Simone stood and looked through the new peephole. It was Jerome and he looked angry. Don't open it, Brianna said nervously. I won't, Simone assured her. But she stayed at the door watching him. Jerome knocked again, harder. I know you're in there. This is my apartment. You can't keep me out. You have 23 hours left to collect your belongings, Simone called through the door. After that, anything you leave behind will be discarded. And if you damage this property in any way, you'll be arrested. You can't do this to me, Jerome shouted. That judge doesn't know what she's talking about. This apartment is mine. The law says otherwise, Simone replied calmly. Leave now or I'm calling the police. Call them, Jerome said. I'll tell them you're trespassing. Simone pulled out her phone and dialed 911, making sure Jerome could hear her. Yes, I need to report someone violating a court order. He's at 445 Riverside Drive, Unit 302, and he's been ordered to stay away from this property. Jerome's pounding on the door stopped. They heard his footsteps retreating down the hallway. 2 police officers arrived 15 minutes later. Simone showed them the court order and explained the situation. The officers took notes and promised to increase patrols around the building for the next few days. If he comes back and tries to enter, call us immediately, one officer said. With that court order, we can arrest him for trespassing. After the police left, Brianna looked shaken. I thought he might break down the door. He won't, Simone said confidently. He's a coward who only picks on people who can't fight back. Now that you have the law on your side, he knows he can't win. But Simone wasn't entirely sure that was true. Jerome had shown himself capable of elaborate planning and callous cruelty. Who knew what he might do when he realized he had lost everything? They decided to stay together that night for safety. Simone slept on the couch while Brianna and Caleb took the bedroom. Neither woman slept well, both listening for any sign of Jerome returning. Morning came without incident. Simone woke to find Brianna already awake, sitting by the window and looking out at the city. I never thought I'd be back here, Brianna said softly. When they locked me out, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything. You're stronger than they thought, Simone said. Stronger than even you realized. Brianna turned to look at her mother. I want to press charges. Not just the civil suit. I want Jerome and Lorraine arrested for what they did. Patricia is already working on that, Simone said. The judge referred the case to the district attorney. But you can also give a statement to the police about the abuse and the theft. Then let's do it today, Brianna said. I want to make sure they can't do this to anyone else. They went to the police station that morning, leaving Caleb with the babysitter again. A detective named Harrison interviewed Brianna for over 2 hours, taking down every detail of the abuse, the theft, the forged documents, and the illegal eviction. This is a strong case, Detective Harrison said when they finished. We already have the court documents and the financial records your attorney provided. With your statement, we have enough to bring charges against both Jerome Mitchell and his mother. How long will it take? Brianna asked. That depends on the district attorney's office, the detective said. But based on what you've told me and the evidence we have, I'd expect charges to be filed within the next 2 weeks. Thomas called Patricia that afternoon with more discoveries. I found the account where Jerome deposited the loan money. He and Crystal Montgomery have been moving it around trying to hide it. But I tracked it to an account at First National Bank. They still have about $15,000 left. Can we freeze that account? Simone asked when Patricia relayed the information. I'm filing a motion for a freeze right now, Patricia said. If the judge grants it, they won't be able to access any of that money. It will be held until the civil suit is resolved. What about Crystal Montgomery? Brianna asked. Is she involved in all this? She might not have known about the fraud initially, Patricia admitted. But if Jerome used stolen money to wine and dine her, she was benefiting from his crimes. We might be able to go after her for receiving stolen property, depending on what she knew and when. That evening, Jerome called Brianna's phone. She looked at the screen in panic. Don't answer it, Simone said. Let it go to voicemail. They listened to the voicemail together afterward. Jerome's voice was sugar-sweet, nothing like his angry tone from the night before. Baby, I know things got out of hand. But we can work this out. Your mom is filling your head with lies about me. I love you and Caleb. Come back to me and we can be a family again. Forget about all this legal stuff. It's just making things worse. Brianna deleted the message, her hands shaking. He thinks I'm stupid enough to fall for that. He thinks he can manipulate you like he did before, Simone said. That's why we're documenting everything. Save all his messages, all his calls. They prove he's trying to manipulate you even after losing in court. Over the next few days, Jerome called repeatedly. When Brianna wouldn't answer, he started texting. The messages cycled between apologetic and threatening, sweet and cruel. Patricia advised them to keep every single one. These messages show consciousness of guilt, Patricia explained. They show he knows he did wrong and is desperately trying to avoid consequences. The criminal prosecution will love this. A week after the court hearing, Simone received a letter at her home address. It was from Lorraine. The letter was handwritten and rambling, full of accusations and justifications. Lorraine claimed that Simone had always looked down on her and Jerome. She said that giving Brianna the apartment was a way to show off and make them feel inferior. She insisted they had done nothing wrong by taking what they believed was rightfully theirs. The letter ended with a threat. You think you've won, but this isn't over. My son and I will fight you every step of the way. You've made powerful enemies and you're going to regret it. Simone immediately gave the letter to Patricia, who added it to their evidence file. She's delusional, Patricia said. And this letter proves she still doesn't understand that what they did was criminal. This helps our case. 2 weeks after the hearing, Detective Harrison called. The district attorney has filed criminal charges against Jerome Mitchell and Lorraine Mitchell. Jerome is charged with fraud, theft, forgery, and illegal eviction. Lorraine is charged with conspiracy and fraud. They've been summoned to appear for arraignment next week. Brianna cried when she heard the news. They're really going to face justice? They're really going to face justice, Simone confirmed, holding her daughter close. But that night, Simone lay awake thinking about Lorraine's threat. She didn't believe Jerome and his mother were capable of physical violence, but they had shown themselves capable of elaborate schemes. What else might they try? She decided to upgrade the security at both the apartment and her own home. She had cameras installed at the apartment building entrance and in the hallway outside Unit 302. She changed her own locks and installed a security system. Am I being paranoid? She asked Thomas when he came to check the camera installation. No, he said seriously. People who are desperate and facing criminal charges can be unpredictable. It's smart to protect yourself and your family. The arraignment hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning. Simone and Brianna attended, sitting in the back of the courtroom. Jerome and Lorraine arrived with Keller, their lawyer, looking significantly less confident than they had 2 weeks earlier. The charges were read aloud. Both defendants pleaded not guilty as expected. The judge set bail at $10,000 each and scheduled a preliminary hearing for 6 weeks later. Jerome and Lorraine couldn't make bail immediately. They were taken into custody until someone could come up with the money. Simone watched them being led away in handcuffs and felt no sympathy. They had done this to themselves. How long can they stay in jail? Brianna asked as they left the courthouse. Until someone pays their bail, Patricia explained. Given their financial situation, that might be a while. Crystal Montgomery paid Jerome's bail 3 days later. He was released but ordered to stay away from Brianna, Caleb, and the apartment. Lorraine remained in jail for another week before a relative bailed her out. Thomas continued his investigation, uncovering more evidence of Jerome's schemes. He had taken out credit cards in Brianna's name without her knowledge. He had sold her grandmother's china and other valuables online. He had even tried to take out a second loan using false information. The guy is a professional con artist, Thomas said during one of their meetings. Or at least he thinks he is. He's actually terrible at it, which is why we're catching him. With each new piece of evidence, the case against Jerome and Lorraine grew stronger. But Simone knew the real battles were still ahead. The criminal trial, the civil lawsuit, and the ongoing struggle to keep Brianna safe from their attempts at manipulation or revenge. She was ready for all of it. She had built an army of lawyers, investigators, and evidence. And she was going to make sure that Jerome and Lorraine learned that actions have consequences, no matter how much they believed they were entitled to what they had stolen. 3 weeks after the arraignment, Thomas sat in Simone's living room with files spread across the coffee table. Brianna was at work at her new job as a receptionist at a dental office, and Caleb was at daycare. It was time for a comprehensive update on the investigation. I've been digging into Jerome's life for the past month, Thomas began, and what I've found goes way beyond what we already knew. This guy has been running scams for years. Simone leaned forward, listening intently. I talked to 3 of his former girlfriends, Thomas continued. All of them have similar stories. He would move in with them, convince them to put his name on their bank accounts or credit cards, drain their money, and then disappear. Brianna isn't his first victim. She's just the first one whose mother had the resources to fight back. Can these women testify? Simone asked. 2 of them are willing, Thomas confirmed. They're angry and want to see him held accountable. One of them, a woman named Regina, said Jerome stole over $20,000 from her before vanishing. She never pressed charges because she was embarrassed and didn't think anyone would believe her. Thomas pulled out another file. Here's where it gets interesting. Lorraine has been involved in insurance fraud before. I found records of 3 suspicious insurance claims over the past decade. A house fire that investigators suspected was arson but couldn't prove. A car accident where the other driver claimed Lorraine deliberately staged the collision. And a disability claim that was denied because medical evidence didn't support her assertions. So this is a pattern for both of them, Simone said. Exactly, Thomas agreed. They're both grifters. Jerome learned from his mother, and they've been working together on various schemes for years. The apartment theft was just their latest and most ambitious plan. He opened another folder, this one filled with photographs. I've been following Jerome since he got out on bail. He's been meeting regularly with Crystal Montgomery at her apartment. But here's the interesting part, he's also been meeting with 2 other women. Simone looked at the photographs. They showed Jerome at coffee shops and restaurants with different women, always dressed in his expensive clothes, always turning on the charm. I think he's trying to find his next victim, Thomas said. He knows his relationship with Brianna is over and his scheme failed. So he's looking for someone new to con. Have you warned these women? Simone asked. I can't directly interfere without evidence of current criminal activity, Thomas said. But I did create an anonymous online post detailing his pattern of behavior with his photo. I made sure it showed up when anyone searched his name online. If any of these women do their homework, they'll find it. Simone felt a surge of satisfaction. They were not just defending Brianna, they were potentially protecting future victims. What about the money situation? Simone asked. You said he and Crystal Montgomery had $15,000 left from the loan. The court froze that account, Thomas confirmed. But Jerome is resourceful. He opened new accounts under Crystal's name and has been moving money around. I'm tracking it, but he's trying to hide assets before the civil trial. Can we prove that? Simone asked. Working on it, Thomas said. The problem is he's using Crystal as a shield. Technically, the money is in her name, so it's harder to claim it's his. But if we can prove he's controlling the accounts and directing the transactions, we can pierce that veil. Patricia arrived an hour later for a strategy session. She had news about the criminal case. The preliminary hearing is in 3 weeks, Patricia said. The district attorney is taking this seriously. They're planning to call you and Brianna as witnesses, along with the building manager, Jerome's former supervisor from the warehouse, and some financial experts to testify about the fraud. What are Jerome's chances of getting off? Simone asked. Not good, Patricia said with satisfaction. The evidence is overwhelming. The forged documents, the stolen money, the illegal eviction, it all paints a clear picture. His lawyer is probably advising him to take a plea deal. What kind of deal? Simone asked. That depends on the DA, Patricia said. But given the severity of the crimes and Jerome's apparent pattern of similar behavior, I'd expect they'll want prison time. Probably 2 to 5 years if he pleads guilty to all charges. And if he doesn't take a deal? Brianna asked, arriving home from work just in time to hear the end of the conversation. Then we go to trial, Patricia said, which could take a year or more. But the outcome would likely be worse for him. A jury hearing about a man who forced his wife and baby to live on the street while he spent stolen money on his mistress would probably want to throw the book at him. Brianna set down her purse and sat next to her mother on the couch. I want to testify, she said. If this goes to trial, I want to tell the jury what he did to me. You might have to, Patricia said gently. But it won't be easy. Jerome's lawyer will try to make you look like you're exaggerating or that you somehow deserved the treatment you received. Let him try, Brianna said, her voice stronger than Simone had heard it in months. I know the truth. The jury will see the truth. Over the next few weeks, they prepared for the preliminary hearing. Patricia coached Brianna on how to testify, what questions to expect, and how to stay calm under cross-examination. Thomas continued gathering evidence, building an ever more detailed picture of Jerome's criminal activities. The therapy sessions Brianna had been attending were helping. Her therapist, Dr. Sharon Williams, specialized in domestic abuse recovery. Under her guidance, Brianna was learning to recognize the manipulation tactics Jerome had used and to rebuild her sense of self-worth. He made me doubt everything about myself, Brianna told Simone after one session. My abilities, my judgment, even my memories. Dr. Williams calls it gaslighting. He would do or say something terrible, and then when I confronted him about it, he'd tell me I was remembering wrong or being too sensitive. That's why what he did was abuse, Simone said. It wasn't just the theft and the eviction. It was the systematic destruction of your confidence and independence. I see that now, Brianna said. And I'm learning that none of it was my fault. I didn't fail at my marriage. He was never trying to have a real marriage. I was just his target. One afternoon, Simone received a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Foster? A woman's voice asked. My name is Regina Hartwell. I'm one of the women your investigator talked to about Jerome Mitchell. Yes, Simone said. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you, Regina said, for fighting him. When he did the same thing to me 5 years ago, I was too ashamed to tell anyone. I thought it was my fault for being stupid enough to trust him. But seeing you and your daughter stand up to him, seeing him actually facing consequences, it's helping me deal with what happened to me. Simone felt a lump in her throat. I'm glad we could help, even indirectly. I want to do more than just testify at his trial, Regina continued. I want to warn other women about him. Would it be okay if I shared my story publicly? I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through, what your daughter went through. I think that would be wonderful, Simone said. And brave. Regina did share her story, posting it on social media along with Jerome's photo and details of his pattern of behavior. The post went viral in their local community. Other women began commenting, sharing their own experiences with Jerome or with men like him. It became a movement of sorts, women protecting each other by sharing information about known con artists and abusers. Crystal Montgomery saw the post. She called Thomas's office, asking to speak with him. She wants to make a deal, Thomas told Simone and Patricia when he relayed the call. She claims she didn't know about the fraud when she got involved with Jerome. Now that she's seeing all these stories from other women, she's scared she's next. Does she have useful information? Patricia asked. She says Jerome told her he was planning to sell the apartment as soon as he got clean title to it, Thomas said. He was going to use the money to start over somewhere else with her. She has text messages where he discussed the plan. That's evidence of intent, Patricia said. It proves this wasn't a misunderstanding about ownership. It was a deliberate plan to steal and sell property. Should we offer her immunity? Simone asked. That's up to the DA, Patricia said. But if her testimony helps convict Jerome, it might be worth it. The district attorney agreed to meet with Crystal. In exchange for her testimony, they agreed not to charge her as an accessory, though she would have to return any money or gifts Jerome had given her that came from the stolen funds. Crystal's testimony was damning. She described in detail how Jerome had bragged about outsmarting his stupid wife and her interfering mother. He had told Crystal that Brianna was too weak and broken to fight back, and that Simone would eventually give up once she realized the legal battle would be expensive and time-consuming. He underestimated both of you, Crystal told them during her deposition. He thought women were easy to manipulate and control. It never occurred to him that you'd be smart enough and tough enough to beat him at his own game. As the preliminary hearing approached, Thomas delivered his final report. It was over 100 pages long, documenting every aspect of Jerome's crimes, his pattern of behavior with past victims, Lorraine's history of fraud, and the full extent of the financial damage they had caused. This is everything, Thomas said, handing Simone a bound copy. Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every financial record. Jerome Mitchell is finished. Simone looked at the report, this comprehensive document that represented weeks of work and thousands of dollars in investigation fees. It was worth every penny. Thank you, she said to Thomas. You've given us everything we need to make sure he pays for what he did. The night before the preliminary hearing, Simone sat with Brianna in the apartment. Caleb was asleep in his room, peaceful and unaware of the adult drama surrounding his young life. Are you ready for tomorrow? Simone asked. I think so, Brianna said. I'm nervous about seeing Jerome in court again. But I'm also ready to face him. He doesn't scare me anymore. He's just a sad, pathetic con artist who thought he was smarter than everyone else. That's exactly what he is, Simone agreed. And tomorrow the court is going to see him for what he really is too. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, mother and daughter, united in their fight for justice. Mom? Brianna said finally. When this is all over, when Jerome is in prison and we've won the civil suit and everything is settled, what do you think I should do? What do you want to do? Simone asked. I want to go back to school, Brianna said. I want to finish my degree. I want to have a career and be independent. I want Caleb to grow up seeing his mom as someone strong and capable, not as a victim. Then that's exactly what you should do, Simone said. And I'll help you every step of the way. Not because you need me to, but because that's what mothers do for their daughters. Brianna smiled, and in that smile, Simone could see the confident, capable woman her daughter had been before Jerome and was becoming again. Tomorrow they would face him in court. And they would win. Because the truth was on their side, the law was on their side, and they had something Jerome never had, genuine love and support for each other. Jerome had picked the wrong family to victimize. And now he was going to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. The preliminary hearing took place on a cold November morning. The courtroom was more crowded than Simone expected, with several reporters present. The case had garnered local media attention after Regina's social media post had gone viral. The story of a mother finding her daughter homeless at a gas station, and then fighting back against the people who had stolen from her, had captured public interest. Judge Robert Franklin presided over the preliminary hearing. He was known for being thorough and fair, with little patience for games or delays. The district attorney, Margaret Torres, was a sharp woman in her 40s who had a reputation for winning difficult cases. She laid out the charges against Jerome and Lorraine methodically, walking the judge through each piece of evidence. Your Honor, the evidence shows a clear pattern of criminal behavior, De Torres said. Jerome Mitchell married Brianna Foster 8 months after she received an apartment as a gift from her mother. Over the following months, he systematically isolated her from her support system, emotionally abused her, and stole money from household accounts. When his mother faced foreclosure on her own home, he conspired with her to steal the apartment through fraud and forgery. Torres presented the forged documents that Jerome had shown the building manager, alongside the original legitimate deed. Even to Simone's untrained eye, the differences were obvious. The forged version had inconsistencies in the font, the seal was slightly off, and the signatures didn't match the originals on file with the county. A document examiner from the state crime lab has analyzed these papers, Torres continued. She will testify that the defendant's documents were created using a computer and consumer-grade printer, not by any legitimate title company. This was amateur forgery, but it was effective enough to fool the building management temporarily. Jerome's attorney, Henry Keller, looked uncomfortable. He had tried to get the charges dismissed or reduced before the hearing, but De Torres had refused every offer that didn't include significant prison time. The first witness called was Brianna. Simone watched her daughter walk to the stand, her head held high. Brianna wore a simple blue dress and looked both vulnerable and strong. De Torres asked Brianna to describe her relationship with Jerome, from their meeting through the marriage and ultimately to the eviction. Brianna spoke clearly, her voice steady even when describing the worst of the abuse. "He would tell me I was worthless," Brianna testified. "That no one would ever want me except him. That I was lucky he stayed with me even though I was such a burden. He said my mother only gave me the apartment because she felt sorry for me, not because I deserved it." "How did these comments make you feel?" Torres asked. "Like I was nothing," Brianna said quietly. "Like I deserved to be treated badly. He broke me down little by little until I believed everything he said." When Keller cross-examined Brianna, he tried to suggest she had been an equal participant in the marriage's problems. But Brianna stood her ground. "Did you ever steal money from joint accounts?" Keller asked. "No," Brianna said firmly. "I used money from our joint account for groceries, utilities, and things for our son. Jerome used it for expensive dinners with his girlfriend and to pay off his mother's debts." "You don't know that's what he used it for," Keller challenged. "We have bank records that prove exactly what he used it for," Brianna replied. "And testimony from Crystal Montgomery confirming it." Keller moved on quickly. The building manager, Robert Chin, testified next. He described how Jerome had presented documents claiming to be the new owner and how he had believed them because they looked official. "Did you verify the documents with the county records office?" Torres asked. "No," Chin admitted. "I should have, but I didn't. Mr. Mitchell was convincing and the documents looked legitimate." "When did you learn they were fraudulent?" "When Miss Foster's attorney contacted me with the original deed and proof of ownership," Chin said. "I immediately recognized that I had been deceived." Jerome's former supervisor from Central Warehouse testified about Jerome's termination for theft. "We caught him on camera taking merchandise and loading it into his personal vehicle," the supervisor said. "He wasn't even subtle about it. When we confronted him, he claimed he was just borrowing the items and planned to return them. We fired him on the spot and filed a police report." "Did Mr. Mitchell face charges for that theft?" Torres asked. "No," the supervisor said. "The amount stolen wasn't enough to pursue prosecution, and we just wanted him gone. Looking back, I wish we had pressed charges. Maybe it would have stopped him from victimizing others." Crystal Montgomery's testimony was perhaps the most damaging. She described how Jerome had pursued her while still married, how he had spent lavishly on her using money he admitted came from his wife's accounts, and how he had discussed his plan to sell the apartment and leave town with her. "He told me his wife was stupid and would never figure out what he'd done," Crystal testified, looking ashamed. "He said her mother would back down once she realized fighting him would be too expensive and time-consuming. He was so confident that he'd outsmarted everyone." "Did he ever express remorse for what he was doing to his wife and child?" Torres asked. "Never," Crystal said. "He talked about them like they were obstacles to be removed, not people he had any responsibility to. When I saw the social media posts from his other victims, I realized I was just the latest in a long line of women he'd used. I'm lucky Miss Foster's mother stopped him before he could do the same thing to me." Lorraine was called to testify about her role. She was defiant on the stand, refusing to show any remorse. "That apartment should have been my son's," Lorraine insisted. "A wife's property belongs to her husband. That's how marriage works." "That's not how property law works in this state," Torres said. "Property acquired before marriage and titled in one person's name remains separate property. You knew this, but you helped your son steal it anyway because you needed money." "We didn't steal anything," Lorraine snapped. "We took what was rightfully ours." Torres showed Lorraine the foreclosure notices on her own home. "You were 3 months behind on your mortgage when this occurred, correct?" "That's none of your business," Lorraine said. "It's directly relevant to your motive," Torres replied. "You were about to lose your home. Your son committed fraud to get a loan using someone else's property as collateral. He used that money to save your house. You were a direct beneficiary of his crimes." "So what if I was?" Lorraine said. A mother should help her son and a son should help his mother. There's nothing wrong with that. There is when it involves fraud, theft, and leaving a baby homeless, Torres said coldly. After 2 days of testimony, Judge Franklin announced his decision. I've heard enough to establish probable cause for all charges, the judge said. The evidence of fraud and forgery is overwhelming. The evidence of theft and illegal eviction is similarly clear. This case will proceed to trial. Bail will be increased to $50,000 each, given the defendants' demonstrated willingness to commit crimes and their attempts to hide assets. Neither Jerome nor Lorraine could make the higher bail. They were remanded to custody until trial. As they were led away, Jerome turned to look at Brianna. You're going to regret this, he mouthed. Simone saw Brianna stiffen, but her daughter didn't look away. She stared right back at Jerome until he was forced to turn and walk out of the courtroom. He's still trying to intimidate you, Patricia observed. It's not working anymore, Brianna said quietly. Outside the courthouse, reporters approached them asking for comments. Simone had discussed this possibility with Patricia beforehand. My daughter was the victim of domestic abuse, fraud, and theft, Simone told the cameras. The criminal justice system is working as it should, holding the perpetrators accountable. We hope this case sends a message that you cannot victimize vulnerable people without facing consequences. One reporter asked Brianna directly, how do you feel about your husband going to prison? He stopped being my husband the day he chose to abuse me and steal from our family, Brianna said. I feel relieved that he's being held accountable and can't hurt anyone else. The news coverage that evening was favorable. The story of a mother and daughter fighting back against domestic abuse and fraud resonated with viewers. Simone received dozens of emails and calls from people sharing their own stories of being victimized by con artists and abusers. But the legal battle was far from over. The criminal trial was scheduled for 3 months away, and Patricia was simultaneously pursuing the civil lawsuit. In the civil case, we're going after everything, Patricia explained during a strategy meeting. We're suing for the return of the stolen money, for damages related to the emotional distress and illegal eviction, for the cost of the legal fees, and for punitive damages designed to punish particularly egregious behavior. How much are we talking about? Simone asked. Based on the evidence, I'm recommending we seek $250,000 in total damages, Patricia said. That includes the $15,000 stolen from your account, $50,000 for the illegal eviction and emotional distress, another $50,000 in punitive damages, and the rest for legal fees and costs. Can they pay that? Brianna asked. Probably not, Patricia admitted. But we can put liens on any property they have, garnish any future wages, and make sure they're paying for their crimes for years to come. Even if they can't pay it all, the judgment will follow them forever. Simone nodded. It wasn't really about the money. It was about making sure Jerome and Lorraine understood that their actions had serious, long-lasting consequences. Over the next few weeks, Patricia filed multiple motions related to the civil case. She sought access to Jerome's financial records, Lorraine's bank accounts, and any assets they might have hidden. She subpoenaed Crystal Montgomery's records to trace where the stolen loan money had gone. She deposed Jerome's former girlfriends to establish his pattern of fraudulent behavior. Jerome and Lorraine's attorneys tried to fight every motion, but they were fighting a losing battle. The evidence was too strong and they had too few defenses. They're going to try to settle, Patricia predicted. Once they realize they can't win, they'll want to negotiate a lower payment in the civil case and probably take a plea deal in the criminal case. What should we do if they offer to settle? Simone asked. That depends on what they offer, Patricia said. If they offer full restitution of the stolen money plus reasonable damages, we might consider it. But if they try to lowball us or make demands like asking Brianna not to testify in the criminal trial, we reject it immediately. The settlement offer came 2 weeks later. Jerome's attorney proposed that they pay back the $15,000 stolen from Simone's account, and in exchange all other claims would be dropped. Absolutely not, Simone said when Patricia presented the offer. That's what I told them, Patricia replied. They're testing to see if you're willing to give up. When you reject this offer, they'll know you're serious about seeing this through to the end. The counteroffer from Patricia was uncompromising. Full restitution, $100,000 in damages, all legal fees, and a formal admission of wrongdoing in court. No negotiation. Jerome's attorney called Patricia personally to complain that the demands were unreasonable. Patricia's response was succinct, "Then see you at trial." As the criminal trial date approached, Simone could see the stress taking a toll on everyone involved. But she could also see Brianna growing stronger. Her daughter was working full-time, taking online classes toward her degree, and thriving as a single mother. The apartment was now truly home, decorated with new furniture Simone had helped her buy and filled with pictures of Brianna and Caleb. "I'm proud of you," Simone told Brianna one evening as they ate dinner together. "For what?" Brianna asked. "For surviving," Simone said. "For fighting back. For rebuilding your life. Not every victim has the strength to do what you've done." "I had help," Brianna said, reaching across the table to squeeze her mother's hand. "I had you. Some people don't have anyone." "Then we need to make sure this case sets a precedent," Simone said. "We need to show other victims that they can fight back and win. That abusers and con artists can be held accountable." "We will," Brianna said confidently. "We're going to win this case, and then I'm going to help other women in similar situations. Maybe I'll even go into law someday. Use what I learned to help others." Simone smiled. Her daughter had not only survived Jerome's abuse, she was planning to use the experience to help others. That was the ultimate victory, transforming pain into purpose. The criminal trial was going to be the culmination of months of work, preparation, and legal maneuvering. But Simone was ready. They had the evidence, they had the witnesses, and most importantly, they had the truth. Jerome and Lorraine had thought they could steal from her family and get away with it. They were about to learn just how wrong they had been. The criminal trial of Jerome and Lorraine Mitchell began on a gray Monday morning in February. The courtroom was packed with spectators, reporters, and supporters. Regina and two other women Jerome had previously conned sat in the gallery, wanting to watch him face justice. Jury selection had taken 3 days. De Torres was looking for jurors who understood the seriousness of financial crimes and domestic abuse but wouldn't be so biased that the defense could claim unfairness. The final jury consisted of 7 women and 5 men, ranging in age from late 20s to early 60s. In her opening statement, Torres laid out the case methodically. "This is a story about greed, cruelty, and betrayal. The defendants, Jerome Mitchell and his mother Lorraine Mitchell, conspired to steal an apartment from a young mother. They used fraud, forgery, and emotional abuse to accomplish their goal. And when they succeeded, they threw that young mother and her 2-year-old child onto the street without any remorse." Torres walked the jury through the timeline: the apartment purchase, Jerome's job loss, the systematic abuse, the forged documents, the illegal eviction, and the loan Jerome had taken out using fraudulent paperwork. "The evidence will show that this was not a misunderstanding or a civil dispute," Torres concluded. "This was a carefully planned crime, motivated by greed and enabled by a complete lack of empathy for the victims. When you hear all the evidence, you'll see that the defendants are guilty beyond any reasonable doubt." Henry Keller's opening statement for the defense was less confident. He tried to paint Jerome as a man who made mistakes but didn't have criminal intent. "My client believed he had a right to the apartment as the husband of the titled owner," Keller argued. "While his methods may have been flawed, he didn't set out to commit crimes. This is a case where a marriage fell apart and property disputes arose. It belongs in civil court, not criminal court." But even Keller seemed to know his argument was weak. You can't accidentally forge documents. You can't mistakenly steal $15,000. And you can't unintentionally force a mother and baby to live in a van. The prosecution's case took 2 weeks to present. Brianna testified again, this time in even more detail about the abuse she had suffered. The jury seemed moved by her testimony, several of them taking extensive notes. The financial expert testified about the paper trail of stolen money, showing exactly how Jerome had siphoned funds from the household account and used them for his affair with Crystal Montgomery. Bank records, credit card statements, and receipts painted a clear picture of someone living lavishly on stolen money while his wife and child struggled. The document examiner from the state crime lab testified about the forged deed. "These documents were created on a home computer," she explained, showing enlarged images of the forgeries on a screen. "You can see the inconsistencies in the seal, the spacing of the text, and the signature. This was not a professional document. It was created by someone with access to a scanner, a computer, and basic photo editing software." Crystal Montgomery testified again, this time for a full day. The prosecution introduced text messages between her and Jerome where he explicitly discussed his plan to sell the apartment and leave with her. One text read, "Once I get clean title to the place, I'll sell it fast. We'll have at least $150K to start fresh somewhere warm. Maybe Florida. My stupid wife won't even know what happened until it's too late." Another message said, "My mom needs this money to keep her house. She helped me get rid of the problem, so I owe her. But after that, it's you and me, baby." The problem he referred to was Brianna. The defense's cross-examination of Crystal tried to paint her as an equally guilty participant who was now trying to save herself. But Crystal held firm. "I didn't know the apartment was stolen when I started dating Jerome," she testified. "He told me his wife had left him and given up her claim to their property. I believed him because I had no reason not to. When I found out the truth, I was horrified. That's why I'm testifying against him now." Regina testified about her own experience with Jerome, establishing the pattern of behavior. She described how he had done the exact same thing to her. Moved in quickly, isolated her from friends and family, convinced her to give him access to her finances, and then drained her accounts before disappearing. "He's a professional con artist," Regina said. "He studies women, finds their vulnerabilities and exploits them. What he did to Brianna wasn't an accident or a mistake. It was his established method of operation." Lorraine's defense was even weaker than Jerome's. Her attorney, a court-appointed lawyer named Sandra Mills who looked exhausted from the beginning, tried to argue that Lorraine had only been trying to help her son and didn't understand that what they were doing was illegal. But the prosecution had email evidence showing Lorraine had researched how to forge property documents online. They had her computer search history showing queries like, "how to create fake deed," and "penalty for property fraud." Ms. Mitchell knew exactly what she was doing, Torres argued. She wasn't a confused mother helping her son. She was an active participant in a criminal conspiracy. She helped forge the documents, she helped intimidate Brianna during the eviction, and she directly benefited from the crimes by having her mortgage paid off with the stolen loan money. When Lorraine took the stand in her own defense, she proved to be her own worst enemy. She was combative, defensive, and unrepentant. "That girl didn't deserve that apartment," Lorraine said. "She didn't work for it. She didn't earn it. Her mother just handed it to her on a silver platter. My son works hard. He deserved to have something nice too." "So you felt entitled to steal it?" Torres asked during cross-examination. "We didn't steal anything," Lorraine insisted. "We took what should have been ours." "Based on what legal principle?" Torres pressed. "Based on fairness," Lorraine said. "Based on what's right." "But not based on law," Torres said. "You took property that wasn't yours because you felt it wasn't fair that someone else had it. That's the definition of theft, Ms. Mitchell." Lorraine had no good answer for that. Jerome chose not to testify, probably on advice from his lawyer. But his absence from the stand meant the jury never heard any direct explanation from him about his actions. All they had were the text messages, the testimony from his victims, and the evidence of his crimes. The defense's closing argument was brief and unconvincing. Keller tried once more to suggest this was a civil matter blown out of proportion, but his heart wasn't in it. Mills, representing Lorraine, barely tried to defend her client at all. Torres's closing argument was powerful. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've heard 2 weeks of testimony about these defendants' crimes. You've seen the forged documents. You've heard from the victims. You've seen the bank records and the text messages. The evidence is overwhelming and clear. Jerome Mitchell is a con artist who targeted a vulnerable young mother, isolated her, abused her, stole from her, and ultimately threw her and her baby onto the street. He did this not out of confusion or mistake, but as part of a deliberate plan to steal valuable property for his own benefit. Lorraine Mitchell was his willing accomplice. She helped plan the crime, helped execute it, and directly profited from it. She showed no remorse then and shows no remorse now. These defendants had every opportunity to do the right thing. When Brianna tried to contest the eviction, they could have admitted their mistake. When the police were called, they could have come clean. When they were sued in civil court, they could have made it right. Instead, at every turn, they doubled down on their lies and their crimes. The only reason justice is being served today is because Brianna's mother found her sleeping in a van at a gas station and refused to let this injustice stand. Not everyone has someone to fight for them. Not every victim has the resources to pursue justice. But in this case, we can send a message that these crimes will not be tolerated, that abusers and thieves will be held accountable, and that justice is available to those who seek it. Find these defendants guilty on all counts. Give Brianna and her son the justice they deserve. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, their verdict was swift and decisive. On the count of fraud in the first degree, guilty. On the count of theft in the first degree, guilty. On the count of forgery, guilty. On the count of illegal eviction, guilty. On the count of conspiracy, guilty. For Lorraine, the verdicts were the same on all counts she faced. Simone held Brianna's hand as the verdicts were read. Brianna was crying quietly, But Simone could tell these were tears of relief, not sadness. Sentencing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. De Torres told them to expect Jerome to receive 4 to 6 years in prison, with Lorraine receiving 2 to 4 years. It's not life in prison, Torres acknowledged. But it's substantial time. And they'll both be convicted felons for the rest of their lives, which means they'll face restrictions on employment, housing, and voting. Their lives as they knew them are over. In the hallway outside the courtroom, reporters surrounded them. Simone made a brief statement. Justice has been served today. My daughter and grandson can finally move forward with their lives without fear. We hope this case shows other victims of domestic abuse and financial fraud that the legal system can work for them if they're willing to fight for their rights. Regina approached them, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she said to Brianna. Thank you for having the courage to fight him. I couldn't do it, but watching you do it has helped me heal from what he did to me. Brianna hugged her. We helped each other, Brianna said. Your testimony made a difference too. Over the next 3 weeks, Simone watched her daughter transform. The guilty verdict seemed to lift a weight from Brianna's shoulders. She smiled more, slept better, and engaged with life in a way she hadn't since before meeting Jerome. The civil trial was scheduled for 2 months after the criminal sentencing. But 2 days before the criminal sentencing hearing, Henry Keller called Patricia with a settlement offer. They want to settle the civil case, Patricia told Simone and Brianna. They're offering full restitution of the $15,000, plus $50,000 in additional damages, plus all legal fees. Is that enough? Simone asked. It's more than we'd likely get if we went to trial and won, Patricia admitted. Collecting judgments is difficult. They don't have a lot of assets. If they're offering to pay this amount, they probably have family members who are putting together the money. If we hold out for more, we risk getting nothing. What do you think we should do? Brianna asked. I think we should take it, Patricia said. With one condition. They have to admit in writing that they committed fraud, theft, and abuse. No claims of misunderstanding or mistake. Full admission of wrongdoing. Jerome and Lorraine's lawyers agreed to the terms. 3 days before the sentencing hearing, both defendants signed statements admitting to all the crimes they had committed and all the harm they had caused. The statements would become public record. At the sentencing hearing, Judge Franklin heard victim impact statements from Brianna, Simone, and Regina. Brianna spoke about the 3 weeks she spent homeless, sleeping in a van with her baby, terrified and hopeless. She spoke about the abuse she had endured and the years of therapy ahead of her to heal from the trauma. Simone spoke about the heartbreak of finding her daughter at that gas station, and the fury she felt at people who could do such things to a vulnerable young mother. Regina spoke about her own victimization years earlier and how Jerome's conviction finally allowed her to believe that justice was possible. Judge Franklin listened to all of it before pronouncing sentence. Mr. Mitchell, you are a predator who targeted vulnerable women for financial gain. You have shown no remorse, no empathy, and no understanding of the harm you've caused. This court sentences you to 5 years in state prison, with credit for time served. For Lorraine, the sentence was 3 years. As they were led away to begin their sentences, Jerome turned back one last time to look at Brianna. But this time his expression wasn't threatening. It was defeated. He looked like a man who had finally realized the consequences of his actions. Outside the courthouse, Simone and Brianna stood together in the winter sunshine. It was over. The legal battles, the testimony, the evidence gathering, all of it was finally done. What now? Brianna asked. Now you live your life, Simone said. You finish school, you raise Caleb, you do whatever makes you happy. Jerome is out of your life forever. Do you think he'll try to contact me when he gets out? Brianna asked. If he does, we'll get a restraining order, Simone said firmly. But I don't think he will. His mother will be out before him and I suspect she'll be his focus. Besides, he knows now that you're not alone and vulnerable. He knows you have support and resources. He won't make that mistake again. They walked to the parking garage together, ready to go home and start the next chapter of their lives. The chapter where Jerome Mitchell was nothing but a bad memory and a cautionary tale. The chapter where Brianna was strong, independent, and free. 6 months after the sentencing, Simone sat in Brianna's apartment surrounded by moving boxes. Brianna had decided she wanted a fresh start in a new place, somewhere without any memories of Jerome. With the settlement money, she had been able to put a down payment on a small condo in a better neighborhood with excellent schools for Caleb. Are you sure about this? Simone asked, taping up a box of kitchen supplies. This apartment has good memories now too. You reclaimed it. I know, Brianna said, carefully packing Caleb's toys. And that was important. But I'm ready for a new beginning. A place that was always mine, that Jerome never touched or lived in. A place where Caleb can grow up without any shadow of what happened. Simone understood. The apartment had been both a battlefield and a victory, but it made sense that Brianna would want to move on from it. The new condo is perfect, Brianna continued, her voice excited. 2 bedrooms, a small patio, and it's within walking distance of that Montessori school I told you about. Caleb starts there next month. Caleb, now 3 years old, was happily playing with his toy trucks, completely unaware of the life changes happening around him. He would have no memory of the van or the gas station or the court battles. To him, life had always been stable, secure, and filled with his mother's love and his grandmother's support. How's school going? Simone asked. Really well, Brianna said, her face lighting up. I'm maintaining a 3.8 GPA in my online classes. If I keep at this pace, I'll have my bachelor's degree in business administration within 2 years. After that, maybe law school like I mentioned before. You'd make an excellent lawyer, Simone said proudly. I think I would too, Brianna agreed. Especially helping victims of domestic abuse and fraud. I understand what they're going through in a way most lawyers don't. I can be their advocate because I've been where they are. Brianna's therapy sessions with Dr. Williams were still ongoing, but less frequent now. She had graduated from weekly sessions to monthly check-ins. The nightmares had stopped, and the anxiety that had plagued her for months after the trial had finally eased. I got a letter yesterday, Brianna said, pulling an envelope from her purse. From Regina. She wanted me to know she's doing well. She got a promotion at work, and she's in a healthy relationship now with someone who treats her right. That's wonderful, Simone said. She deserved good things after what Jerome put her through. She said something in the letter that really stuck with me, Brianna continued. She said that watching me fight back gave her the courage to fight back in her own life. Not against Jerome, since his trial handled that, but against all the little ways she had been letting herself be treated badly. By her boss, by her family, by friends. She said if I could stand up to Jerome in court, she could stand up for herself in everyday life. You inspired her, Simone said. And you'll inspire others. That's the ripple effect of standing up for yourself. Other people see it and find their own strength. The doorbell rang. It was Patricia, stopping by to help with the move and to drop off the final paperwork related to the civil settlement. The money has been transferred to your account, Patricia told Brianna, handing her a folder of documents. $15,000 in restitution for the stolen funds, $50,000 in damages and $35,000 covering your legal fees. After my fees are paid, you'll have about $70,000 left. That's real money, Brianna said, looking at the numbers. Money I can use for school, for Caleb's future, for building a real life. You earned it, Patricia said. Not the way anyone would want to earn money, but you fought for justice and you won. That money represents your courage and your refusal to be a victim. Have you heard anything about Jerome or Lorraine? Simone asked Patricia. Jerome is in a medium security prison about 3 hours from here, Patricia said. According to the Department of Corrections records, he's been disciplined twice for trying to run scams on other inmates. Some people never learn. And Lorraine? She's in a minimum security facility. She'll be eligible for parole in about 18 months, but given her attitude at trial, I doubt she'll get it on the first try. The parole board doesn't look favorably on unrepentant criminals. Good, Simone said firmly. They should serve every day of their sentences. Patricia stayed to help pack for a few hours and they talked about other cases, other victories. Patricia had recently taken on 2 more cases involving domestic abuse and financial fraud, partly inspired by Brianna's case. Your case set a precedent in this jurisdiction, Patricia explained. Judges are taking these crimes more seriously now. District attorneys are more willing to prosecute. It's made a real difference. After Patricia left, Simone and Brianna continued packing. The apartment that had been a symbol of both Simone's love and Jerome's betrayal was being emptied, ready for the next tenant who would have no idea of the drama that had unfolded within its walls. Mom, Brianna said as they took a break for lunch. I never properly thanked you. For what? Simone asked, though she knew. For believing me. For fighting for me. For not giving up when it would have been easier to just let it go, Brianna said, her eyes filling with tears. Some mothers would have said I made my bed and had to lie in it. Some would have blamed me for marrying Jerome in the first place. But you never did. You just fought for me. You're my daughter, Simone said simply. That's what mothers do. We protect our children no matter how old they are. I want to be that kind of mother to Caleb. Brianna said. Strong, supportive, and always ready to fight for him if he needs it. You already are, Simone assured her. They finished packing the apartment over the next 3 days. On moving day, a team of movers loaded everything into a truck while Simone drove Brianna and Caleb to the new condo. The condo was in a cheerful building with red brick walls and green shutters. The neighborhood was family-friendly with parks nearby and good lighting on the streets. Brianna's unit was on the second floor with a view of a community garden. It's perfect, Brianna said as they walked through the empty space. Completely perfect. Over the next week, they furnished the condo with new pieces that Brianna picked out herself. A comfortable blue sofa for the living room. A dining table with 4 chairs. A bed with a bright maroon comforter for Brianna's room. A smaller bed with a superhero theme for Caleb. Everything was new, chosen by Brianna, reflecting her taste and her fresh start. On the day Brianna officially moved in, they had a small housewarming party. Patricia came, as did Dr. Williams, Regina, and a few friends from Brianna's workplace and online classes. It was intimate and joyful, celebrating not just a new home but a new life. To new beginnings, Patricia toasted, raising her glass of sparkling cider. And to the strongest mother and daughter team I've ever had the privilege to represent. Everyone drank to that, and Simone felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the beverage. This was what victory looked like. Not just the court rulings and the prison sentences but this, her daughter happy, healthy, and building a life on her own terms. A few weeks later, Brianna invited Simone over for dinner. She had cooked a meal herself, something she hadn't done in years. The apartment smelled wonderful, and Caleb was excited to show his grandmother his new room. "Grandma, look at my bed," Caleb said, jumping on it with 3-year-old enthusiasm. "It has Batman on it." "It's wonderful," Simone agreed, sitting down to admire the bedroom that Brianna had decorated with such care. Over dinner, Brianna shared news. "I got offered a promotion at work. Office manager position. It comes with a significant raise and better benefits." "That's wonderful," Simone exclaimed. "Are you going to take it?" "I think so," Brianna said. "It'll be more responsibility but I can handle it. And the money will help with school expenses and saving for Caleb's future." "You've come so far," Simone said, looking at her daughter with pride. "A year ago you were sleeping in a van. Now you're getting promoted, excelling in school and raising Caleb in a beautiful home." "A year ago I thought my life was over," Brianna said quietly. "Jerome had convinced me I was worthless, that I couldn't survive without him. Finding out I could not only survive but thrive without him was the best revenge I could have asked for." "Revenge?" Simone asked. "Not the mean kind," Brianna clarified. "The kind where you prove wrong everyone who tried to break you. Jerome wanted me to fail. He wanted me to come crawling back to him, desperate and broken. Instead, I'm succeeding. I'm happy. I'm building a life that's better than anything he could have given me. That's the best revenge there is." Simone understood. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And Brianna had reached the point where Jerome was nothing to her but a bad memory and a lesson learned. She didn't hate him. She simply didn't think about him at all anymore. "Have you thought about dating again?" Simone asked carefully. "Not yet," Brianna said. "I'm not ready. Dr. Williams says that's normal and healthy. I need time to fully heal, to be comfortable alone before I'm ready to be with someone else. Maybe in a year or 2. Maybe longer. I'm not in a hurry." "Good," Simone said. "Don't rush yourself. The right person will come along when you're ready." As the months passed, Simone watched her daughter continue to flourish. Brianna took on the promotion and excelled at it. She completed 2 more semesters of online classes with perfect grades. She joined a single mother's support group and found community with other women navigating parenthood alone. Caleb thrived in his new preschool, making friends and developing his own personality. He was smart, kind, and confident, qualities that Brianna was actively nurturing in him. He would grow up knowing nothing but love, stability, and the example of a strong mother who had overcome adversity. One evening, Brianna called Simone with excitement in her voice. "Mom, I got accepted into the pre-law program at State University. They're offering me a partial scholarship based on my grades and my story. I could start next fall if I want to." "That's incredible," Simone said. "Are you going to accept?" "I think so," Brianna said. "It means another few years of school but I really want to do this. I want to help people the way Patricia helped us." "Then do it," Simone encouraged. "I'll help with Caleb when you need it. We'll figure out the logistics. This is your dream and you should chase it." The acceptance into the pre-law program was another milestone in Brianna's journey from victim to victor. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was building a career, a purpose, a legacy. Dr. Williams, in one of Brianna's final therapy sessions, summarized her progress. When you first came to me, you were traumatized, afraid, and doubting your own worth. Now you're confident, purposeful, and thriving. You've done the work to heal and it shows. I couldn't have done it without support, Brianna said. My mom, you, Patricia, Regina, everyone who believed in me and helped me fight. Support is important, Dr. Williams agreed. But you did the actual work. You faced your abuser in court. You rebuilt your life. You made the choice to heal instead of staying broken. That took courage and strength that came from within you. As summer turned to fall, and as Brianna prepared to start the pre-law program, Simone reflected on the year and a half that had passed since that night at the gas station. So much had changed. So much had been fought for and won. Jerome would remain in prison for another 3.5 years. Lorraine would be eligible for parole soon but would likely remain incarcerated for at least another year. Their crimes had cost them their freedom, their reputations, and their futures. But more importantly, their crimes had been exposed and punished. The legal system had worked. Justice had been served. And Brianna had not only survived but had transformed her trauma into purpose. That, Simone thought, was the real victory. Not the court rulings or the prison sentences, but the fact that her daughter was happy, healthy, and building a future that Jerome had tried to destroy but couldn't. The gas station discovery had been a crisis, a moment of absolute horror and heartbreak. But it had also been a turning point, the beginning of a journey from victimhood to victory, from helplessness to empowerment. And now, as Brianna stood on the threshold of law school, ready to help others who had been victimized the way she had been, that journey was reaching a new chapter. Not an ending but a new beginning filled with purpose and promise. 3 years after the gas station discovery, Simone sat in the gallery of a courtroom, but this time as a proud observer rather than a participant in a legal battle. Brianna was at the counsel table, wearing a professional green suit, presenting her first case as a law student working in the university's legal clinic. The case involved a young woman named Nicole who had been financially abused by her ex-partner. It was eerily similar to Brianna's own story: systematic theft, emotional manipulation, and a victim left with nothing. But Brianna was there to make sure Nicole didn't have to fight alone. Your Honor, Brianna argued, her voice confident and clear, the evidence shows a pattern of financial control and abuse. My client trusted the defendant, and he exploited that trust to steal over $12,000 from her accounts. We're asking the court to order full restitution and to grant a protective order to prevent further harassment. Simone watched with pride as the judge ruled in Nicole's favor, granting everything Brianna had requested. After the hearing, Nicole hugged Brianna with tears of gratitude. You understood what I was going through, Nicole said. Other lawyers I talked to made me feel stupid for trusting him. But you got it. You knew. I knew because I've been there, Brianna said gently. And I promise you it gets better. You're going to rebuild your life and you're going to be stronger than ever. This had become Brianna's mission. She was in her second year of law school, specializing in family law and domestic abuse cases. The university's legal clinic had quickly recognized her talent and passion, giving her opportunities to work on real cases under faculty supervision. You were incredible in there, Simone told her daughter as they left the courthouse together. Thanks, Mom, Brianna said, smiling. It felt good. Really good. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Caleb, now 5 years old, was in kindergarten at an excellent public school near their condo. He was thriving, excelling in reading and art, and had a group of close friends. He had never asked about his father. Jerome had been gone from his life before Caleb was old enough to form memories. When he's older and asks, Brianna had told Simone, I'll tell him the truth in an age-appropriate way. But for now he knows he has a mom who loves him and a grandmother who would do anything for him. That's enough. Patricia had retired from her law firm and now worked as a consultant, taking only cases that interested her. She had become a mentor to Brianna, reviewing her briefs and offering advice. You're a natural, Patricia told Brianna during one of their meetings. You have the legal mind for this work and the emotional intelligence to connect with clients who have been through trauma. When you graduate, I want you to consider joining my consulting practice. We could do great work together. Thomas, the private investigator, had also stayed in touch. He occasionally gave guest lectures at Brianna's law school about the investigative side of building cases. He always used Brianna's case as an example, with her permission, showing how thorough investigation could make the difference between winning and losing. Regina had moved to a different city for a job opportunity but kept in contact through email and occasional video calls. She was engaged to a kind man who treated her with respect and love. She credited Brianna's courage with giving her the strength to open herself up to a healthy relationship. "I used to think I deserved to be treated badly," Regina wrote in one email. "But watching you stand up for yourself taught me that I deserved better. Now I have better, and I'm happy in ways I never thought possible." One afternoon, Simone's phone rang with a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Foster? This is Warden Johnson from Central State Prison. I'm calling about inmate Jerome Mitchell." Simone's heart rate picked up. "What about him?" "He's requested to speak with you or your daughter," the warden said. "He says he wants to apologize. We're calling to ask if you or Miss Foster would be willing to participate in a restorative justice meeting." "Absolutely not," Simone said firmly. "My daughter has moved on with her life. She doesn't need or want his apologies." "I understand," the warden said. "I'll note your response in his file. Have a good day, Miss Foster." Simone told Brianna about the call that evening. "He's probably angling for parole," Brianna said, showing no emotion at the mention of Jerome's name. "Parole boards like it when inmates show remorse and try to make amends with their victims. I don't care. He can rot in there for all I'm concerned." "He's eligible for parole in about 6 months, Simone said. "Patricia says we can submit victim impact statements opposing his release." "We should definitely do that," Brianna said. "Not because I'm afraid of him anymore, but because men like him don't change. He'll get out eventually, but it shouldn't be a day earlier than his sentence requires." They did submit the statements. Brianna's was particularly powerful, detailing not just what Jerome had done, but the years of therapy and work it had taken her to recover. She ended with a clear message: Jerome Mitchell is a con artist and an abuser. He showed no remorse at trial and only seeks to apologize now because it serves his self-interest. He is not reformed and he should not be released early. The parole board denied Jerome's request. He would serve his full sentence. Lorraine had been released on parole after serving 2 years. She was living with her sister Denise in a different state, working a minimum wage job and struggling to rebuild her life. She was prohibited from contacting Brianna or Simone as part of her parole conditions. Through mutual acquaintances, Simone heard that Lorraine blamed everyone but herself for her situation. She claimed she had been treated unfairly by the courts, that her son had been made a scapegoat, that Simone and Brianna had ruined their lives out of spite. She had learned nothing. "Some people never take responsibility for their actions," Patricia observed when Simone shared this information. "Lorraine will probably spend the rest of her life as a victim in her own mind, never acknowledging that she brought her consequences on herself. As long as she stays away from Brianna and Caleb, I don't care what she thinks," Simone said. As Brianna approached graduation from law school, she had multiple job offers from firms that specialized in family law and domestic violence advocacy. She carefully considered each one, ultimately choosing a nonprofit legal aid organization that worked specifically with victims of domestic abuse. "It doesn't pay as much as the private firms," she explained to Simone, "but this is where I can make the most difference. These are the clients who need help the most and have the fewest resources to get it." "I'm so proud of you," Simone said, tears in her eyes. "You've turned your pain into purpose. You're going to help so many people." Brianna's graduation day was warm and sunny. Caleb, now 6 years old, wore a little suit and waved excitedly when his mother's name was called. Simone, Patricia, Dr. Williams, and Regina, who flew in for the occasion, all cheered as Brianna walked across the stage to receive her law degree. At the celebration dinner afterward, Patricia raised a toast. "To Brianna, who went from sleeping in a van to graduating law school. You are proof that the worst moments of our lives don't have to define us. We can choose to let them refine us instead." "Thank you, all of you," Brianna said, looking around the table at the people who had supported her journey. 3.5 years ago I thought my life was over. I was homeless, broke, and convinced I was worthless. But my mom found me and refused to let me give up. She fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. And all of you helped in your own ways. I wouldn't be here without this community of support. You would have found your way eventually," Simone said. "I just made sure you didn't have to do it alone." After passing the bar exam on her first try, Brianna started her new job at the legal aid organization. Her first solo case involved a woman named Tasha whose husband had taken out credit cards in her name and ruined her credit. Brianna won the case handily, getting the husband charged with identity theft and Tasha's credit restored. "You're really good at this," Tasha told her after the victory. "Have you done this kind of law for a long time?" "Not long," Brianna admitted. "But I understand what you went through because I've been through something similar. That's why I do this work. To make sure other women don't have to face it alone." As years passed, Brianna built a reputation as a fierce advocate for abuse victims. She won case after case, helping women reclaim their finances, their homes, and their lives from abusive partners. She became a frequent speaker at domestic violence conferences and legal seminars. Caleb grew into a thoughtful, kind young boy. When he finally asked about his father at age 8, Brianna told him the truth in terms he could understand. "Your father made some very bad choices that hurt people," she explained. "He went to prison for those choices. That's why he's not in our lives." "Are you sad about it?" Caleb asked. "No," Brianna said honestly. "Because if he hadn't shown his true colors, we might still be in a bad situation. His leaving, even though it was hard at the time, led to a much better life for us. So in a way, I'm grateful." "Are you going to get married to someone else someday?" Caleb asked. "Maybe," Brianna said. "If I meet someone wonderful who treats us both with respect and love. But I'm not in a hurry. We're doing great just the way we are." 4 years after Jerome's conviction, Simone received a notification that he had been released from prison. He had served his full sentence minus time for good behavior. She immediately informed Brianna. "Good to know," Brianna said calmly. "But he's not our problem anymore. He's a felon, he has no money, and he knows better than to come near us. Let him try to rebuild his life. It's none of our concern." True to Brianna's prediction, Jerome didn't contact them. He moved to another state to live with a relative and tried to find work with a felony record. It wasn't easy. The conviction followed him everywhere, a permanent reminder of his crimes. Crystal Montgomery had married someone else and was living a quiet life, presumably having learned her lesson about believing con artists. Meanwhile, Brianna's life continued to blossom. She was promoted to senior attorney at the legal aid organization. She started teaching a seminar at her law school about representing domestic abuse victims. She bought a house with a backyard where Caleb could play. She even started dating someone, a gentle accountant named Marcus who treated her with kindness and respect. "Is it serious?" Simone asked after Brianna had been dating Marcus for 6 months. "It might be," Brianna admitted. "He's nothing like Jerome. He's patient, honest, and he adores Caleb. We're taking things slow, but I can see a future with him." "I'm glad," Simone said. "You deserve happiness." "I am happy," Brianna said. "Really genuinely happy. I have meaningful work, a wonderful son, a loving mother, and now a relationship with someone who treats me right. Jerome tried to destroy me, but instead, he inadvertently freed me to build a life far better than anything I would have had with him." 5 years after the gas station discovery, Simone sat in another courtroom watching another of Brianna's cases. This time, Brianna was representing 3 women in a class action lawsuit against the landlord who had been using forged documents to evict tenants illegally. It was a big case, one that could set important precedents. As Brianna argued before the judge, Simone reflected on the journey they had been on together. From that terrible night at the gas station to this moment of professional triumph, it had been a long road. There had been pain, trauma, legal battles, and countless hours of work. But they had won. Not just in court but in life. Brianna was thriving. Caleb was happy and healthy. And Simone had proven to herself and to her daughter that a mother's love and determination could overcome even the worst betrayals. The judge ruled in favor of Brianna's clients, and Simone joined the celebration in the hallway afterward. The 3 women Brianna had represented were crying with relief and gratitude, knowing their homes were secure and their landlord would face consequences. "You saved us," one of them told Brianna. "We didn't know where else to turn." "That's what I'm here for," Brianna said warmly. "Making sure people like you have someone to fight for them." That evening, Brianna, Caleb, Simone, and Marcus had dinner together at a nice restaurant. It was a celebration not just of the day's victory, but of the life Brianna had built. "A toast," Simone said, raising her glass. "To justice, to family, and to second chances." "To Mom," Brianna added, "who refused to let me give up even when I wanted to. Everything good in my life now exists because you found me that night and decided we were going to fight back." "To Grandma," Caleb chimed in, "who always brings me the best toys and teaches me card games." They all laughed and drank to the various toasts. Looking around the table at her daughter, grandson, and Brianna's kind boyfriend, Simone felt a profound sense of peace. The gas station discovery had been one of the worst moments of her life. But it had led to this: a stronger family, a daughter with purpose and passion, a grandson growing up loved and secure, and the satisfaction of knowing they had fought for justice and won. Jerome and Lorraine had tried to break them. Instead, they had only made them stronger. And that, Simone thought, was the best revenge of all. Not anger or hatred, but moving forward, thriving, and building a beautiful life from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The legal battles were over. The emotional healing was well underway. The future was bright with promise and possibility. They had started with betrayal and heartbreak, but they had ended with justice and peace. And that was worth every moment of the fight.